5 o'clock.
5 o'clock on Thursday, October 16th. And this is the budget subcommittee. So we'll open the meeting with a quick round of introductions. So you can start.
I'm not a member, but I'm Sean Dewey, the Assistant Town Administrator.
I'm Wendy Nightingale, Finance Director, Town Accountant, also not a member.
I'm Connor Reed, Town Administrator.
I'm Kelly Lamb. I'm a member and part of the Finance Committee.
Mike DePietro, member, Finance Committee.
Jackie Wiseman, member, School Committee.
Jim Hamilton, member, School Committee.
Alicia Cabral, Superintendent.
Joe Spagna, Director of Finance for the school.
Welcome. We have to have the floor. So lovely to have you here. And I'm Jen Stacy, Select Board Rep and Chair. And Jamie Stebbins is on his way in. He's the other Select Board Rep. All right, so you'll notice on the agenda, there's a section added here for public comment. Had there been someone here from the public, we would have offered them the opportunity to come and speak. We're reserving, I think, moving this forward 10 minutes on the agenda to allow for that. And also, I think maybe it's a good time to have discussion now then about, well, actually, I'm going to wait later on that. So since no one's here, I think we can move on from item number 1. And let's go to item number 2. So impact of FY26 budget cuts and ongoing town. Hi, Jamie. We literally just started, so you missed nothing. All right, so Connor, do you want to take this one?
Sure, so I'll speak for the town side. Folks here might be familiar with whether it's a select board, school committee, or finance committee. Obviously, we're preparing for the fall town meeting, but one of the articles is indirectly related to our operations, and that's something that the fire chief will be coming to the select board to give a presentation on Monday, that we are actively exploring privatization of ambulance services because of how severe staff shortage we are now facing in our fire department. When we were preparing for the current fiscal year, there were obviously deep cuts in all departments, school side, town side, and between the positions that were cut, injuries, and then numerous people who have resigned since the leading up to and then after the override failed, the department is down about 10 out of 44 positions, which is almost a quarter of the department, which is not sustainable. That is pretty severe. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it. Because those departments do layoffs and reverse seniority order. Once you have the least senior person leave, it makes somebody else nervous, understandably, about the future. Because we have all been, I think, quite clear that it's not as if the challenges we faced going into 26 just go away. They don't. We know we're facing structural headwinds going to 27. We know we have reserves we plan to pull out. We know, I was just informed of the GIC commissioners meeting today that they're already $78 million in the red for their fiscal year from GIC, which does
How much, Connor? Sorry.
78 million on a $2.8 million budget for the year, which does not bode well for rates going into 27. And so it is very hard in that environment to try to recruit people to come be your new most junior member. You need money to do that, which we don't have. There are some who say, well, you have stabilization funds, take those and just do that. That's one-time money. People in this field are reasonably savvy to that. And obviously Easton's challenges are very, very public. It's one Google away. So we're just in an incredibly hard spot. And I'm sorry that I'm stressed talking about it. It's very stressful, frankly. And we're working with the chief and the union to try to navigate a way forward to keep the firefighters safe, keep the community safe the best we can with, frankly, lack of resources that we have. So we've talked about that a bit at the school committee. The chief came in and did a presentation at the finance committee I thought went very well. The committee was really engaged. It was a good conversation. He'll be coming to the select board Monday night to talk about the same. There's an article in the town meeting warrant for basically incidental funding related to transition costs. We know, although it's not exactly the same example, when you're making, when you're doing things a very different way, you're changing your operations, there are things that come up that you can't always anticipate. There's not exactly a playbook for this. Like when we were regionalizing dispatch, for example, and dissolving local dispatch. And so there's an article, Article 5, that would allocate 195,000 of one-time funds, not putting it into the fire department budget because we don't want to put that into a recurring spend, but having it as a special appropriation for the fire chief to have access to for financial analysis, operating policy compliance analysis related to privatization, overtime that may result from the transition phase, things of that nature, communication with the public so that we could help educate people on what this means. Because I think obviously there's, people are going to have strong feelings on this. I would anticipate they'll run the gamut. Some people say, okay, great, privatize. Others say, oh my God, what are we doing? So we want to make sure that we can communicate the facts on this. So Finance Committee has recommended that. I appreciate that. We'll ask the select board to say and town meeting as well. But it's important that Article 5 is about having that supplemental special article to assist with the transition. It's not actually a question of approving whether or not this happens. It's a management and operations call that lies with the chief, and we are in a position now where we need to be making decisions. There was choices that could be made about our operations, and that was on June 10th, and we are here now, and we need to do the best we can to keep people safe, so that's what we're going to do. So that's a pretty, I think, extreme and acute example of where some of our operations stand. You will see a supplemental article of the warrant. I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but Article 3 is a budget supplement. You'll see moving $300,000 to the fire department. Some of that's related to overtime, some of that's anticipation of bargaining. Wendy and I and the chief have worked very hard. We don't want to just plow more one-time money into the budget. This is reflective of, since this fiscal year has begun, I've cut additional positions that are funded. There is funding for those jobs in the budget right now, even in the non-override budget, but as folks have resigned, which is something that's happening more now than it used to, we have been cutting many of those positions. And so we are reallocating funds away from some departments, planning, health and community services, after cutting jobs that are currently funded to move towards fire. Some of our reviews came in modestly better than forecasted, but those are recurring, which is positive. Health insurance, the health insurance budget is able to be reduced modestly because we had so many people leave going into this year. So, I didn't need to kind of gloss over it, but one of the ways we're moving those money is we were cutting even more positions. So we've cut one of two administrative positions in the planning department, so that department's now closed for walk-ins. We had a transportation coordinating position resign, and we cut that at HCS. It's challenging. So that's where the town is, where we're also obviously exploring. We've established a stormwater committee to explore the feasibility of establishing a framework of bylaws and a potential fee and enterprise-based account for stormwater infrastructure that DPW currently has to try to maintain out of the general fund, which they can't, and realistically are not going to have the capacity to do so anytime soon. Jim is one of those citizen reps who's been put on that committee. So there's an article at town meeting to do a small budget for feasibility there that we would hope to bring to folks in the spring for fiscal 27. We also have ongoing conversations happening with Public Works about either substantial fee increases or entirely privatizing trash collection in Easton. Because those costs are going up significantly, as I think anyone who reads the news has seen that the waste collection business is not especially stable right now. And the indirect impact on what are now extremely were already lean town operations, but in some ways are anemic, frankly. Having a single admin for Public Works, excluding water, also have to be the sole person and touch point for customer service for multiple thousand waste management accounts is a real hit. And when prices are growing in a way that we're not going to be able to effectively price negotiate, it's going to be a hard question that Jamie and Jen know it's going to ultimately be a choice for the select board. So we brought that to them to start that conversation. We're trying to negotiate with waste management. But my view of where the town departments stand is that we are taking a very hard look at the things we are doing and questioning, is whatever we are looking at is this a core function that only we can do? That's obviously not where I want us to be programmatically, but that is where our resources are aligned. So that's, I think, covers a lot of where we are operationally.
Okay, thank you. You covered a lot of what Jamie will update with, but I think having the select board perspective is still important to give you updates. So, because we had a lot of discussion around these things that we can draw on. Does anybody have any questions for Connor? Dr. Cabral, would you give the perspective from the school side of operations and the impacts that you've been seeing since we last met?
Sure. I will. I'll talk about only this year so that Jim can talk about next year
Okay.
and projections in his budget. Does that make sense? I mean, in his presentation? Okay. So the effects this year, we also have positions that we're not filling. We do have to triage because when it comes to positions in special education, they are very, very closely regulated. And so we have to keep track of any compensatory services for students if they are not done in strict alignment with the IEP. We're a couple months into school now, and we have had to resort to outside agencies to get people to fill some very specialized roles for some of our programs, which obviously is not ideal because you're paying more when you have a third party involved. And also we have a lot of negotiating to do with unions in order for that to happen because it's union labor that we're outsourcing for, hopefully temporarily. But as Connor indicated, and I won't repeat in much detail, it's getting increasingly more difficult to attract people to apply for our open positions, which is something that I'm confident will continue with the current fiscal climate. Our goal is to maintain level service as long as possible. We are also exploring the limited revenue options that we have as a public school district. We don't have a lot of them, so we are presenting to the school committee very soon our information on people who utilize the facilities, the fields, the buildings, also our fees to families for things like transportation when it's optional transportation, sports, clubs, activities, things of that nature. So it's difficult to have those conversations with a fully equitable lens, which is our goal and our charge as a public school district. So we're just trying to maintain as much equity as possible. Of course, there are federal standards for poverty that we have to and do, of course, observe, but it does make things extremely difficult, especially for the people right on the edge of qualifying, but not quite qualifying. And so we are making our way through the year as best as we can, knowing that in order to maintain level service next year, it is going to involve some very serious programmatic shifts and most likely some more reduction in staff. But we're not at that point yet. We're just trying to make our way through this year with some unanticipated expenses already, some unfunded mandates that have already come from between August and now that were unanticipated and, as I said, unfunded. So trying to navigate those things and very quickly pivoting to plan for FY27 as best we can.
I expect every year that you hit some unexpected things because that's just the nature of how it goes. Has this year been more than that than usual? Or?
So maybe two kind of sides to that answer. We get unfunded mandates every year. But the leaner your budget gets, the more impactful they are. So they are more impactful. But we also see a little bit more and a little bit more uncertainty only because of the current national administration is taking some steps that are less predictable than administrations of the past. So the combination of the two is what I would say is creating the trickiest situations for us.
That makes total sense. Does anybody have any questions or comments around the school or for Dr. Cabral? Okay. I think that dovetails well into hearing the board and committee updates. They'll tie into what we just heard and probably spur some conversation. So thank you, Dr. Cabral. Jamie, if you want to start with select board.
Yeah, so as you know,
Oh, here.
so the overarching theme whenever we met, was impacts are being felt, right? So we have constituents coming to us now and either telling us about concerns with the schools, or obviously we're unable to keep private conversations private for very long when it comes to negotiations. And so people are hearing about the real impacts. And, this is where we'd hoped folks would have been with the blitz that we did at the PACE committee, and many of you were involved when got out there and shared all the information, and we're very open book with everything financially. And this is where we hoped folks would have been back then, back in the spring. So we know that this sprint that's about to happen is already happening, because one of the questions is, where are we in the budget planning phase? And we all know we've sped this up. We've talked about it, right? It's now get this information out there as quickly as possible. Assumptions have to be made. And unfortunately, a lot of the assumptions are increases that we talked about. So GIC is a really big deal. We know it when every day we hear about medical insurance costs going up, including our own. We've talked about that. Waste management concerns me a lot because that's a much broader and bigger picture. And I hate to leave our negotiating position by, at least as a town, and having the subscribers we have gives us some leverage. We can be told that, by various companies that, oh, no problem, we'll just take your routes over or whatever. We all know that goes away. They immediately will start charging us what they want to charge us. And the problem is, those costs go up no matter what. There's no landfills basically that are active in Massachusetts anymore. So we send, unless it's being incinerated, we send all of our refuse to other states. A lot of times it's put on trains and sent, south of here. New Hampshire's starting to close off to us. So those costs all have to go up. So these are real concerns that the entire community's got to grapple with, but it makes it really difficult when we talk about, so Craig mentioned one of his biggest concerns is the 4 people that we're now down in DPW, because same thing, we can't hire, we're not attractive right now. And so it's, and at the same time, they're keeping their manning minimum intentionally to try to stay within the constraints that they're in. So to even be able to run our waste program, it's extremely time intensive program, and becomes workload for more than even one position is what it's amounting to. So Craig brought up another good one, and these are just kind of real world things people are sharing now. And this is what we need to hear. We need to start to put some, voice to is having a police detail for a religious, gathering. And we know that right now the temperature is very high, and it creates concern throughout not just our community, but communities all around us when people are gathering and being able to feel safe. And Craig ran into an issue where it used to be pretty simple. You'd find an officer that's willing to take on the overtime. We don't have people with the luxury of that overtime now, and we're seeing it not just everyone thinks about the fire department and all the constraints and issues we have there with staffing and manning, just not even be able to meet min-manning. It's happening on the police department side too. You just don't hear it as much, but it's a definite concern. We're burning people out. This is everyone's concern, is when we burn out these first responders, either an incident happens to them while they're on duty, or they're unable to respond to be where we need them within the community. But as we lose these people, it's, who's there to then support them? And so we're in a real predicament. How about the schools? It's difficult when you've got kids in the school system who are coming home and sharing stories with you, what they're feeling and the impact. I'm wicked overtired, so that's why I'm wearing all my emotions on my sleeve right now. It's just time that we share the real stories, and we hope too that the rest of the community is coming out and doing that with us. So Dottie brought up it's communication. It's we want community members to be emailing us, and we're not seeing that enough yet. And so we need more and more of these stories to be shared, but communicated, right? So it's making sure that we've talked about what are outreach, and Jackie, you've mentioned it too. All right, so the PACE committee, that didn't work, but how do we then? The bandwidth isn't there, right? The folks at this table are doing 1,001 things, and then we're asking all departments to do 1,001 things, but it's how do we do even better than with the PACE committee? I don't think that exists, but what I do think it exists is you're getting to this fever pitch where the community can now say, man, maybe we should get involved. Maybe we should listen. Maybe we should go out and vote, because that's the other thing we talk about is how few people actually came out and exercised their right to vote. We're always going to have people that say no, right? I walked out of a grocery store. I happened to have been down in New Bedford earlier today, or Dartmouth. And one of the petitions is to lower our tax rates in the state from 5% to 4% to, all these accountability things. And there was another one that just caught me, because when you think about that overarching thought that all government is bad and all government should be shrunk, and it's just this trickle-down effect that it's having right now at the community level. And Sean, you sent out a great article the MMA put out about the challenges that are not just here in Easton, but across all 351 communities in the state. And
if the state income tax gets lopped by 20%, it's not gonna help.
Can you imagine?
It's gonna be.
Can't imagine. But so we know that exists. That downward pressure is going to continue to exist because it's being normalized. It's being normalized that every one of us here is in some way not doing a good job, right? That we've not uncovered some stone, that we haven't gone through some line in the budget, that we failed. And that's unfortunate, because when you pulled back the curtains like you did for almost 12 months last year, it's a lot of time and energy spent saying, no, look, ask, it's all here, ask away, let's figure this out. So that's it. It's a plea to the community. I think Dottie said, it's a plea to the community to please get engaged now, come out, let's get the voices to, what matters to you. Because you live here, something's gotta matter. Because I get it, not everyone has kids, so for a lot of people that's not it. But it's gotta matter operationally. Maybe you like having town offices that are actually open and supportive and responsive. Maybe you like having a fire and police that you can rely on. Maybe you like having roads that are safe to travel on and don't require you to be in the mechanic every other month having your car realigned. And so it's all these things that make democracy, like Churchill said, it's the worst form of government, except for all those others that have been tried from time to time. So is it like seeing sausage be made? Yeah, sure, but get involved. Experience it, know what it is. And it's communication, right? It's stopping the othering of everybody and communicating. Just make sure I don't miss a couple highlights here. Jen, you talked about outreach too. And Leisha, you've mentioned, Jen, you've mentioned it. Cuts don't just go away. You don't all of a sudden get the money and then, no, it can take up to a decade to recover from those programs that you lost. How about those good people, those talented people that you had that we've now lost? And we've seen it in the school department. My kids are affected by that. Mm-hmm. It's happening on the town side. We lose good people, paramedics. We lose, we had this amazing community outreach thing going on. And this was another part of Craig's commentary was, we're losing that, right? Whether it's from a mental health perspective or just in general, our police department was doing an amazing job shifting the narrative of all police are bad. When we went through that whole period where everybody was just down on blue, and they really shifted and they got out and that's the way you do it, right? You do win over people by building relationships and showing them that we're not just here for when times are bad. We're here for you when times are good too. We're losing that. We're losing that ability to have people out in the schools, in the community, but certainly from a mental health perspective, that's not getting any better. And I don't see it getting better for people for a long time. It's they're going to continue to live with challenges within their own circles of influence, and then the greater ones that are, impacting those circles of influence. I still am wrestling with this, and I know this group is going to talk more about it. And it's, do you put forth an omnibus override package versus a menu style? And the discussion came up, and I think I might have said, does it motivate more people if you have a menu style? Because will it get them out to vote? Because they see that, hey, the schools could very well be left off of this whole thing while police is funded and fire is not, or you name it, right? And so I started to think, is there a benefit to that? Getting people out, no matter how you do it, so that they're there to vote for what they're passionate about, and then hopefully at the same time don't leave other areas behind. But that concerns me, because I don't, at this point, we tried to talk about examples of other town communities that have successfully done a menu override, and there's not examples we can point to that have passed and successfully, right? I think I'm remembering correctly, there were no good examples.
Yeah, I haven't dug in too much to each of them. I apologize.
Yeah.
It sounds other folks have taken a look. I shared the data set with folks. I mean, it's varied by community. Even within Easton, we've had one omnibus ever and one menu. Menu, I think, was in the 90s, so it was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
It's a hard question. There's no one right way. And I think the concern I've heard from the select board and from some of the other committees, and obviously Pace's perspective, was that if you do a menu, there's pros to it, which is that voters can feel a very, very, very direct amount of control and influence over what it is that they wish to fund at an additional level. But the downside is that, we're one big family. If you put more funding towards one department and everyone else is still not addressed structurally, those people are going to be frustrated the very next year when they're here in structural revenue deficit. But on the flip side, Pace took an approach of trying to make a structural fix, and it was very obviously not palatable to voters, right?
Yeah, and that's, you've really, I think, done a good job of verbalizing my concerns, is that this doesn't affects everyone at this table, affects every department within school, within town, because it's gotten to the point where we're bare bones, and it's hurting, right? It hurts people's lives. It hurts the ones that are coming to work every day and doing with less, having class sizes that are what they are. And I think in some instances 30. What's the largest class size right now? That 37?
Definitely in the 30s. Yeah, well into the 30s.
It's a big deal. That's a big difference. You don't come and move to a community like Easton and expect that that's going to be that you're even going to encounter that. I mean, I couldn't fathom it. Back even when we moved here in 2009, it was, for the reason that, you're going to pay a little bit more, but it's a good school system. So it's worth it. If I'm not going to send my kids to private school and spend X number of dollars, I'll put it into this community. And to me, that's a pretty amazing payback that we've had over the years of what I pay in taxes compared to what I get back. And now, okay, you don't have kids. What else do we get from this community? It's an amazing community to live in because, we have a lot of green space that we pay for. We pay for in our taxes. You can walk just about from any location in town and go enjoy the outdoors. And you've had a really responsive community that's been there, from a first responder standpoint, from a DPW. So to me, there's a lot for everyone.
From a neighbor standpoint, the way neighbors help each other out.
Right. And so I hate to see it come to, and that's why I wrestle a lot with override options. I just don't feel like it is. Like you said, it's not an option. This is all of us that are bearing the burden that, and we're trying to, right the ship here. And that's the thing too. And I think Connor, you said it, that the ship is, it takes a long time to turn that ship. Right now we're going in the wrong direction. It can take a long time to shift it back. Are we going to go another year without doing that? Are we going to be sitting here a year from now, like half of us, I don't know who will still be at the table. So there's things that obviously we're working on, and Jackie, I think to answer some of the questions about how we do this, there is a grassroots piece to this. There is us getting out there and finding, again, neighborhood captains and finding people that are willing to engage. Look, if you're upset, you got to talk about it. You got to speak to it, and then we got to get out there and engage and let people know. This is coming much quicker than it has in the past. We're not going to wait to tell you about it in February and March and April. You're going to know about it now so that we can start to put into action and motion getting these folks out that we're going to need to get to the ballot box and to make some decisions and hopefully digest what we're trying to get through right now. This is a really tough time to figure this out and put something substantive in front of people that isn't just we think. No, we have a pretty good idea. Everything's, all indicators are that it's going to be even worse than it was this past year, and we know that what we asked for last year, even if you ask for that same amount this year, you lose impact. You don't have the ability to do and save programs and help departments, save people who are gone. They're gone. I mean, that's it. So a lot of this is now having to recover and spend the next X number of years recovering from the impacts that we've already made as a community, based on the decisions that we've made. Jen, anything I'm missing?
The only thing I would add is that we did explicitly ask the select board, not a style of a vote, but do you generally support the idea of proceeding with some sort of override? Again, there was not any consensus around what that would look like, but all the members who were present said yes. Again, not an official vote, but.
There was not a specific, it should look like X. There was a general sentiment of, it should not look like what we did.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly. That's the only thing we did
There's
know.
an appreciation by the board, I think, that, we could all spend the next months on how technically correct the PACE proposal was, but it's a democracy and voters didn't want it, right? And so we need to, there is certainly going to be a non-insignificant amount of blowback of folks once it percolates, not that as if we're not talking about these in public meetings, but obviously people don't watch them a lot, that we're considering any approach. But I think that, so the board has expressed, and correct me if you feel I'm getting this wrong, that there's obviously sensitivity of, the option of just try the exact same thing again was in front of the town, and we didn't take it. Right, we could have put that right out again, but the margin was so overwhelming that's unfair.
And it's hard for every member of the board to reconcile the fact that anything we put forth is not going to actually solve the problem. It's just going to slap varying sized band-aids on the issue, and people are not going to be jazzed when at some point, sooner than later, unfortunately, we're going to come back and say we still have problems. These things weren't fixed. So that's another part of the communications challenge, but.
There's just, when we talk about cost increase, I always talked about GIC already. The Stormwater Steering Committee is now, and Jim, thank you for getting involved with that, because that's another unfunded mandate, right? We know we have failing culverts, and we know we've had roads open up, and we don't know what road's going to open up next, but I don't want it to be anyone's car, family, anyone driving into that. You're flirting. We flirt with disaster. I mean, look at Boston. We just shut down a major bridge between Saugus and Revere or Lynn, whatever it was, which is it's emergency service. That'll be closed for weeks now while they triage. And triaging is not the place we want to be. It's the place we're in. It's a place we can avoid going further into. Services and programs. We've obviously, there's ongoing negotiations with the unions in terms of what budget impacts that may have. We don't want to lose this opportunity on the IMA with Brockton to have our wastewater from the industrial park, utilize the capacity in Brockton, because that could be a massive boom to receipts to this town, right? To bring what everyone's asked for, which is, can we shift more off of the residents and more to corporate? You can, but you got to bring them in first.
And it takes time.
And it takes time, and you can't bring them in without spending some of the money that would be required to do the infrastructure, lay the infrastructure to be able to set that area up with sewer instead of failing septics, which now limits and prevents companies from even looking at us, which I thought Granite City Partners did a really great job of telling us, look, that is an amazing spot and everybody drives right by it because you're Easton. And you don't have the infrastructure to support these big companies that are looking to get outside of the 128 corridor. And you're right off of 24. And there's companies setting up in communities on either side of us when this is a kind of a gold mine for us. If we could, again, it's going to cost money, the engineering to do it, and then ultimately bonding a fairly significant project to tie in. I don't know if anyone's ready for that, to hear that, but that's what you have to do if you want to set us up for the future and have less burden on residents and have an opportunity to have larger companies in manufacturing here in the town. And we have it. We're sitting on it. Just a matter of can we...
It blew my mind when the memo documented a 10-year effort to try to make that happen. It's not like this just came about. This is 10 years of work.
That's right.
Finally, we got to this stage in the process. So.
Which is a big deal to get them to
Yes.
agree, right? And it's a big win. It's now, what do you do with it?
Yeah.
Are you going to squander
But
it?
it's not like we're trying. Like we've been trying these things. We have, leadership in this town across the sphere have been trying these things for a very long time.
Under existing services, under review for reduction, elimination, I just know that funding our library. And that was a huge draw to me when I moved to this community, is that library. And to have to shift more burden, meaning we stop helping to fund it, which is a legitimate concern moving forward, is will we continue to fund that, or are we going to see them scale back to be able to live within the means they allowed us? And that's terrifying to me. I mean, that's this really odd move away from exactly what we're trying. When we talk about, if you want to improve society, improve children's access to reading and to education, and you want to create productive members of society, here's how you do it, right? Instead, we're going to take that stuff away, and it just kind of blows my mind. And even I hope, I'm not there yet, but I hope when my kids are out and hopefully successful members of society, that I extend the ladder back, and I'm like, yeah, no, I got to pump money in. There's some, I'm not going to buy a new car this year because I'm going to spend, the money to help the community, because that's ultimately what's, benefits people who are in retirement age when they've got successful students that go on to be successful in the world and help start new manufacturing companies and businesses. And I hope that I'm of that mindset when I'm done rearing children, and that you extend the ladder back. Policies, mandates, operational practices. Obviously, we talked about reduced hours here at town offices, and that's tough when you can't call and get anyone on the phone, and maybe you're trying to get your permits through, and we've done an amazing job automating a lot of it, so that's huge. It's helped to alleviate some of the burden, but it doesn't help when you're trying to call the clerk's office or the tax collection office, or trying to sort things out, because we know it's important to someone in the moment that it's important to them. If you're trying to buy a new home and you're trying to get things accomplished, that amount of time is important to you. Maybe not in every day when we're not stepping in here and needing something, but when you need something, that's important, and you want it to be done quickly. And I just talked about budget planning and trying to get as much done as we can before special town meetings, so that hopefully we're all having a lot of productive conversations between now and then, and hopefully the information we're sharing is taking us much further than where we've ever been this early in the year. So, okay, I think that I'm ready to hand it over, Jen. Thanks.
Thank you, that was very comprehensive. Thank you for your work, and to Jackie's point, it's kind of bittersweet going to all these events for Easton 300, and they're so wonderful, and to show a sense of community, and then behind the scenes, like thinking, but what actually is really happening. It's like hard to reconcile sometimes when you walk through crowds of smiling faces. It's, you know, I'm not trying to be mad, but it's hard to process it. So, would schools like to go next, Jen?
Sure. We generally filled out the template and tried to answer as many questions as we could. So we can adjust moving forward if needed. But under the general questions, we talked about any unanticipated cost increases or reductions. I think we'll cover those pretty comprehensively throughout this. Any unanticipated grant or funding decreases. A short summary, we have 6 major grants. There was a net increase of $210,000, a little bit over that. However, those grants are limited in terms of what they can be spent on, pretty specifically to what they are granted for. Services and programs, what new programs or services are being introduced or being proposed and discussed that could have a budget impact. 2, we wanted to highlight the multilingual learner program. There are no legal mandates for these services provided, but the population is growing. The students must be tested and then attempted to provide a recommended level of service. There is always the risk that the state could start requiring a certain level of services for these students and this population, so which could become an unfunded mandate. The another one is a what's called the medically fragile program. Right now, medically fragile students must be outplaced. This is one of those programs where if we were to bring it in district, there would be an initial outlay, spend money to set up the program. It could eventually become cost neutral or revenue neutral, however you want to look at it, where the students we currently send out of district for these services or for these programs could then stay in district, and we could potentially tuition for other communities to send students to the Easton medically fragile program. Those are currently being studied by the Director of Special Services, so more to come there if those are something that the district would want to pursue. Also, Dr. Kroll, please add anything you want to add.
Doing great.
What existing programs or services are under review for potential reduction or elimination? I think it's too early to talk about that, but if anyone is interested, I think it'd be best for Dr. Cabral to talk about the framework she used last year, or the schools used last year. Would anyone want to go through that high level of that now? Or?
Okay, it's a good idea.
Okay.
So the way we have developed our budget for over a decade now has been through the definitions or buckets of reactive, proactive, and strategic. And so unlike civil service or former civil service, it is not necessarily a last in, first out proposition in terms of programs or staff that is potentially reduced, because it's all based on student need. So for example, if we have a special education program and the teacher of that program is the last person into the district, you can't eliminate that person without completely eliminating a program that has saved us millions of dollars. So it really has to be based on student need. And so we kind of reverse engineered that last year when we went through our process to determine how to pull back. And so we went backwards. We started with strategic. What exists in our department that could be considered strategic based on our budget definitions of strategic, which are things that other districts have, definitely in the best interest of students, but not the core that a student needs to graduate from all of our aims. Then we scaled back to proactive, and anything that's proactive to meet the needs of something that may become an unfunded mandate or is on the cusp of that, or we know legislation is coming on it, so we're trying to be proactive. Things like the way we vet students before they are prescribed special education services, for example, things that really help us save money at the end of the day. And we reduced several, probably most of our strategic items that could not make cost neutral in the district, and then we got into our proactive. And so this year, we will look at strategic again. Not sure if there's anything there that we can still eliminate. We'll probably start with proactive. We will be pulling back on anything that is considered proactive and potentially get into reactive, which would mean that, reactive are those things that we are, maybe there was corrective action required in one of our many audits or reviews from different departments, either financial or programmatic. Maybe we're not going to meet certain mandates. Maybe we aren't going to be able to provide a lot of the services that students have been provided in the past, things that provide outlets for kids or provide things that are proactive in nature, like the things that have kids engaged in social activities outside of school that help them to have risk avoidance strategies or create a community of friends, or the buckets that we reduced last year are probably the biggest buckets we're going to see going forward. Class sizes, definitely activities for students.
Well, can I just say, has there ever been a time when kids need more help in the social realm than now? Getting them off screens, getting them involved in their peer groups, away from phones, and have you ever seen it?
And post-isolation of COVID, we are definitely seeing a confluence of factors that are creating this, what has been called the mental health crisis right now in our younger generations. And these things that draw kids out, we feel as though they're essential, but from a strictly regulatory or legal perspective, they're not maybe necessarily mandated right now. And so we are considering these things proactive for that reason, but certainly in philosophy, we wouldn't consider it proactive. We consider it very important to making sure that we are keeping students engaged, connected. We have these beautiful facilities. We want to make sure that we're making use of them as much as we can. There's no way that the fees we're going to charge is ever going to pay for our full expenses. It would be cost prohibitive to even run them. So we're going to have to start limiting what they are. It's been said quite a few times, I've heard, around town or to me, or hey, somebody posted whatever on social media because I'm not on there. Gee, things aren't that bad. Everything's great. My kid's having a great year. But I'll just repeat, what people are not seeing is what it's taking behind the scenes to kind of make that feeling persist in our student population, and the toll that it's taking on staff across the board. And there's only so long you can put that weight on people who were already giving 150%. We're going to start losing them. And honestly, the successes, especially most recently, that we have enjoyed as a district, which are very well documented and very public, that is on the backs, truly, of our labor. It's not on things, right? 80+% of our budget is our people. And I always talk to administration, the most important thing we do is hire. Because whoever we bring in to be with our kids is 100% whether we sink or swim as a district. And there's only so much you can put on those people before they are able to get either a better salary elsewhere, or just a better quality of life elsewhere. And we're seeing that.
Over salary just this year.
Yeah. Yep.
How many?
I'm sorry?
How many?
How many have we seen leave?
Yeah,
No.
Better salary, better quality of life. Or just guesstimate.
Well, we've started, our HR director has started doing exit interviews, and we've lost double digits of people. Either they've decided to work elsewhere, as recent as last week, or they, in the interview process, when we explain to them our current situation, because I'm never going to mislead anyone, ever. Did not do that last year, will not do that this year, will not do that in the future. We've had people say, thank you for your honesty. I'm in a situation where I really need to think more strategically for my family, and I can't do it at this time. Would love to. You guys are great. This has been a wonderful experience. Just can't do that right now. So I'll actually get you a number, because just rifling through, in my mind, I'm thinking we're in the dozens at this point, just last year and this year.
So I wasn't looking for specifics, just a
No, but that's
order of
an interesting
magnitude.
data point, and I'm gonna actually ask Christina about that.
Yeah, I don't have the exact number offhand, but for us, I'd say north of a half dozen, which given, I mean, our workforce is 160 people, that's a lot. And some people have, and it's something we take pride in here, some people have moved on to bigger and better things, maybe a new position, people are becoming chiefs, things like that. That's great.
Yeah.
That may have happened, whether or not the override failed or not, but there are others who've been explicit that our workforce watches these meetings. Not all of them, but they know someone who does. They know. And there are people making those choices of like, hey, I love it here. This is a good town. There are good residents here. There's good people here. But there's a lot more people looking now and taking opportunities elsewhere where they feel it may be more stable. I think, as the report from MMA shows, I don't think that many places, frankly, are all that safe. I think it's a question of when, not if, communities are in this situation.
Yeah.
Not to sound like a jilted ex about that, but this is a very volatile time for municipalities and school districts. I don't think if that report came out last year, it would have changed anything for us, but it's edification that this is not, to Jamie's point, every superintendent and town manager in Massachusetts didn't suddenly become bad at arithmetic all at the same time, right? And so this is a hard political and cultural moment to be a public servant.
Yeah.
And people, Easton has great employees and they are marketable. And so we are seeing people say, I love it here. I've had a good career here, but I need to think of my family. And I'm not going to wait till, let's say you have an April over. This is the opportunity. We all know how it is in your personal life. The doors of opportunity open, and a lot of people are having to make choices. I'm not waiting to see how the next override track goes. And that's extremely different Dr. Cabral and I have worked here for quite a long time together in similar roles, and people, it was hard to get hired here. Due to a lot of competition, people wanted to come here.
People would teachers with master's degrees and teaching certifications would substitute and be a paraprofessional for years to wait for a position in the district.
Yeah.
That is not our reality anymore.
Yeah.
And that's hard, because Dr. Pearl's right. People are policy, the people we have.
And that's in a very short amount of time, which is
Literally
back to the
months.
point I made
Took years
earlier
for us to
that
build this.
Jamie referred to, is that what you see built over
A decade.
more than a decade goes away in months. And it takes more than a decade to bring that back. This is very well documented of having happened, even in my experience, in my lifetime in education, across the country. It is not something that I'm giving an opinion on. It is very slow to recover. And now, where other towns are having trouble, something that never existed in education before, it was a no-no. You do not poach staff from other districts. You just don't. Now that is actively happening. And people are reaching out to what had been the most desirable districts to work in, where people were expressing a lot of job satisfaction and really feeling supported by the community and having resources that they didn't have in other places. And so people are strategically reaching out to our staff to poach them for their districts. It's such a different reality in a very short amount of time. It's like I'm in a spin about it. It's very, very different. Did I cover what you wanted me to? Okay.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So the next question, policies to reduce expenditures and generate revenue. Under generate revenue, to Dr. Capral's point earlier, I don't think there are a lot of options for the schools. This school year, we did rent rooms at the Easton Middle School to BICO, which is the Bi-County Collaborative, for fiscal year 2026. So we are generating some revenue there. We are reviewing the facilities rentals fees at some point before or in January of 2026, which would then take effect by July 1st of 2026. Again, not to necessarily make a profit, but to reduce the costs of maintaining the facilities and running the facilities while they're being used. We are also scheduling a new naming subcommittee. So that'll be spinning up sometime over the next 2 or 3 months. We're just trying to figure out a time that works for everyone from the original subcommittee, and if they are still interested in being a part of it.
What was that?
The naming subcommittee, so to name classrooms, laboratories, bricks.
Donation.
Yes,
Donation.
through
Yeah.
donations.
Okay, sorry. I think that was the question was like, what's the connection to?
Yeah,
Sorry.
through donations to be used for facilities.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes. So
Will there be recommended amounts at each level?
yes, we're trying to. I think we're just still trying to find all the old documentation and spin this back up and see.
Great.
I think there are rules about you can name without financial contributions, but I would like that to be deprioritized versus for financial contributions. So
Yeah, we have a policy on it, and when they get going again, they're going to review our policy and see if it needs to be changed or made more specific. Or this was done a lot years and years and years ago. You probably remember we named the Dalrymple Auditorium. So yeah, we're getting that going again.
Great. Thank you.
reducing expenditures, solar panels on the top of Blanche Ames, although to Dr. Capral's point earlier, changing federal regulatory environment, I think has put a question mark on the completion of that project.
Yeah, we're pushing the attorneys involved, and I will take responsibility on that. That this is not our first rodeo. We have done that many times, but it is the amount of uncertainty with a big beautiful bill is certainly making a lot of folks on the other side of the table much more nervous about certain language than they typically are. But we are doing everything we can to make sure that those last bits just get over the finish line and get this thing done.
Centralized printing, so removing the printers from classrooms, leasing the copier machines, food service provider change. This just happened at the last school committee meeting. There's Aramark is the new food service provider, and the guarantee says save more than $100,000 over the next vendor.
$100,000 more than the next vendor. Yeah.
Any unanticipated unfunded mandates. There are many. We will go through just a few of them. Mahmood versus Taylor, which was a Supreme Court case that affirmed a parent's right to opt their children out of public school instruction involving LGBTQ+ themed storybooks based on religious objections. The opt-out process and alternative curricular materials must be developed. And then the second bullet under this is we don't necessarily know at this point how many families may opt out and the potential legal costs associated with those opt-out requests. The competency determination, so it was a requirement for high school graduation that used to be primarily based on the MCAS tests and your results there. That has changed to now a coursework-based standard. Students starting with the class of 2026 must now demonstrate mastery by satisfactorily completing coursework in areas like English, math, science, and social studies. which are aligned with state curriculum frameworks. Students can still take the MCAS test and the results are used for other purposes, but they are no longer the sole factor for the competency determination.
Jim, do they have the option to opt out of the test then, or are they all still going to sit for it?
Actually, the high school is as part of the, so MCAS will not be part of the competency determination, but in terms of the graduation requirements, there's actually a committee right now working on a recommendation for the school committee of whether students should still be required to take MCAS or not. What many people didn't realize, I'm told, when they voted for the elimination of MCAS, was that there is still existing a state law that says that there needs to be a common assessment that students need to pass in order to determine their competency for graduation. And so when you take MCAS away, now instead of having a state test, every school
Has to create one.
has to create their own competency. And so they're in that process right now. The MCAS doesn't have to be part of that, but there are other uses for MCAS, and that's part of the graduation requirement now. Is going to be up to the school committee and what the recommendation is from the high school of what role MCAS plays, if at all,
That should cost
in that.
as well. If you think about a state-run program like MCAS, and now
Yeah, it
the
could.
burden is being shifted to us.
Correct. So the common assessments that we have now are all teacher created. They need to work together. They need to have professional development time. They have to be paid for professional development time. They need to, even if we, pull everybody out of classes for a day, you get subs for everybody, and it's not the best for classroom instruction for people to constantly be out. And there's just a lot of indirect costs that directly affect the operating budget to even come up with things like this. And it's effective with the class of 2026, which is probably most concerning to us, is that it's kind of like, figure it out for these kids who are in their senior year right now and don't know
Laugh, but it's like,
what it is going to take to graduate from high school in May.
what's wrong with that?
And
Do you not have the resources and tools to succeed?
Can I ask you a question? I know for my daughter, her advocate told me that there were common standards that she could do instead of the MCAS because of her disabilities. So every district has something around kids that couldn't sit for the MCAS. Do we have something already that we could build off of or start with?
so there was a MCAS alternate that was done with MCAS. We are not allowed to require MCAS now because of the vote.
Yeah.
So there needs to be alternatives created.
But
It has to be done within the district.
But we should have an alternative for kids that couldn't take the MCAS due to disabilities, right? Shouldn't we already
Right, but
have
it's called the MCAS alt.
Okay.
And so we have to come up with our own competency determination graduation.
Oh, so it was a state thing that they,
Yes.
standards, okay.
Yep.
And if anyone's interested, we're going to be reviewing the competency policy at the next school committee meeting. So, sorry.
Just a few more. The Educator Diversity Act, a law signed in November of 2024 that aims to increase the diversity of the state's teaching workforce. I'll try to summarize. Builds on existing grant programs by requiring DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, to establish guidelines and a grant program to help districts recruit, retain, and promote educators from underrepresented groups. The district must appoint a quote-unquote diversity officer as part of this law. Updated restraint and de-escalation policies.
Sorry, can I give
Yes.
a postscript to that?
Sure.
So in terms of that, we have lost our DEIA coordinator position, and now being legislatively mandated to come up with an equity officer for the district. So we haven't navigated how we're going to do that yet. And there was another piece to that, sorry. There were 2 points I was going to make about that, sorry. Oh, the grant. We applied for the teacher diversification grant and did not qualify because of the factors in Easton that make us not qualify for such programs. So that is going to be completely unfunded by even any grants. Sorry, go ahead.
The updated restraint and de-escalation policies, which just require new training, documentation, reporting requirements of staff at the schools. Career and technical education programs, or CTE programs, districts have until December 30th to come up with a plan for 8th graders to explore technical programs. There's an updated to the admissions process, new regulations around access and provisions for acquiring students in indicated career interest in applications, and the state is expanding the number of career and technical education seats to support more students. Kind of building off of that, the last bullet point under here is
To go from to.
Yeah, there's the vocational school budgets, which come directly from the town, or are assessed and sent directly to the town, but are somewhat unknown in terms of how much they increase every year until
Yeah, and here
it gets to you.
they've gone up 40% roughly in 2 years. So,
When do we usually find out that number?
January.
Okay.
And that doesn't include any capital expenses that they add if they have capital projects.
Right, we have been fortunate that well, I suppose Bristol Aggie has one, but our enrollment is so small that the capital impact there has been small. The regional technical vocational school has not had a debt exclusion type thing that's gone on top of that, but it's, it's the formula, as everyone on the school committee knows, views the dollar per student amount needed for technical schools higher than K-12, and so the net school spending minimum state mandated spending there is much higher proportionally, and so those assessments, along with enrollments increasing, and it sounds like there's now mandates to have public schools take a larger role in helping shepherd kids to that, which I don't begrudge. Those are great schools and great careers, but that's a to have it come with no funding and no offset is just a continued challenge that we don't have the tools to meet.
Any timelines for key decisions? We've talked about November and December of this year, attempting to determine the needs and priorities. And then March, you tell me if I'm wrong, March or April of 2026, finalize the reductions that might need to be made.
From a contract perspective, notifying staff.
Any risks or challenges that could impact meeting budget goals? I think we've outlined them, but 2 additional ones are transportation contracts, and then this year there are 6 collective bargaining agreements coming up with the schools.
Yeah, we need to have a bid for transportation for starting next year. So we have no idea what that will be.
Since we usually get one bid.
What is the status of current budgetary allocations? Any areas of concern? 2 items I want to highlight. We will have our quarterly financial report released in November of 2025. So we'll have more information after that is released. And then Mr. Spagna has informed us he will be looking to provide monthly reports and projections at some point in the near future. So
That's great.
I think that'll be very helpful, and we did not put a date on that. But what kind of operational impacts are you bracing for? What are the core essential functions you are attempting to preserve, et cetera? Couple things one item we wanted to highlight, and we can go more in depth in a future meeting, but for example, the universal free breakfast and lunch program. Right now, this is funded via a combination of federal and state money pending appropriation, meaning if it's fully funded, then we will get the money to provide that program. So it is a question mark every year. An example here of what we were trying to do as a district. Public schools has $500,000 in a food service revolving account that should be reserved for buying and maintaining machines and other emergencies, as well as any food service deficit. In the situation that this is not fully funded or going into the next school year, we could start charging for meals again. So the school committee did vote recently, it feels like within the last few months, I guess, voted to increase the prices public schools would charge during the meeting this past summer. School committee is looking at reviewing and voting on meal prices annually to be better prepared moving forward. And I would say, hopefully I'm not overstepping the chair, Dr. Cabral, but I think this is a conversation we want to have of should we start looking at fees every year rather than let it go until there's a big enough problem, things of that nature to make this more cyclical and predictable for people. And again, that was one example of here's a situation we might encounter, here's some options we have, or if you hear about a food service revolving account, this is why we should or should not use it to cover meals or something like that.
So just labor and food right now is about $180,000 a month. And if we did go back to charging, the last study that we did predicted, even with students paying, because it doesn't pay for the whole program, that there would be a $250,000 deficit per year. That has to have increased because we did that study 2 years ago. So, so that's where we would be really in a difficult spot if that is not funded, and it's a very real possibility that could not be funded. It was all over the place this
that's
year
one of
with the
those
governor's
downstream things
budget,
that's
and
not
yeah.
necessarily easy to plan. When in a vacuum, knocking a point off the income tax sounds great, right? Who doesn't want to pay fewer taxes? But for us, going from 5 to 4%, that's a 1 point swing. But that's actually it's a fifth. It's 20% of that revenue for the state. And then the state, who has to balance a budget, they're going to have to make really hard calls on can we continue? We don't know what those are, right? And that's part of the thing that's challenging. And we spend so much time with PACE that there's a lot of like, well, what if this and what if this and what, like, and at a certain point, it's, we know that we're operating in a compromised position. We know that there's a lot of external threats on the horizon that might make that even harder. And so we need to make choices about where do we want to be going into fiscal 27 as a school district in a town, knowing those things, right?
Right, because there are certain areas like food that you're mandated to provide a very specific type of healthy meal, at least for lunch. And the study we did actually was just for lunch. So,
and we looked at, please jump in if I'm misstating, but we look at, you can't charge enough to cover the cost, because then you're going to get less kids.
you're going to get more people who qualify for getting it free or reduced.
And less that are going to be
So it's a
willing
tipping
to
point.
buy their lunch instead of bring it home.
Which you need to subsidize that program.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, and it's a lot of these fee-based things that we're now resorting to are inherently regressive, right? They are disproportionately impactful on people who have lower income compared to other approaches that could have been taken.
So just one example of sort of those kinds of things that most people don't think about, or they think, oh, it's free, that's great, we don't have to pay for that. But it does have budget implications potentially. Sorry.
We are, in terms of the question, are we discussing an override? What questions or comments are coming from those discussions? The school committee is taking a formal position on October 23rd during that meeting with the school committee, so we will be having a more thorough conversation and vote there. In terms of kind of the last few questions, are your boards hearing of similar struggles in other communities? Yes, I did attend a charting of the course training seminar run by the Mass Association of School Committees. It is required for all newly elected school committee members across the Commonwealth, so there were 70 of us there. I did happen to sit next to the person who's also from Bridgewater, which I thought was what are the odds? But and it's also in the news. For example, in Bridgewater, they lost their override as well. One of the things their schools are doing is they are now charging $600 per student per sport, up from $360, and there is no family cap anymore. So things of that nature are happening kind of across the Commonwealth, and I don't, if anyone from Bridgewater is watching, I feel like they had talked about trying again or having the same conversations we're having, but they don't really know how that will go, or don't necessarily have confidence in how that vote would go. So, and I think that's it from us in terms of our report.
Thank you, Jen. That was extremely comprehensive. I know we took some questions and comments as that went, and I realized 15 seconds after I turned it over to you, I forgot to offer a window of conversation and questions for Jamie's commentary. So, any additional questions or comments for either Jamie or Jim or anything?
I did have one. Maybe more for the select board or and/or finance committee, but for PACE, there was the community compact. I guess has anyone been looking at that or still trying to implement that? I feel like that was tied to the override vote, so maybe it has been moved forward, but
Yeah, just like Jamie, Jen, if you're okay with me taking it, I can. So there's components of that got pulled into the master plan. So the select board Monday night, actually, in addition to the chief giving an update on where we are with ambulance, they're also going to be giving presentations on our climate plan, which was adopted last night. Congratulations, Jen. Our master plan update and the municipal reuse study for future vacated police and fire facilities. And so some components of the PACE Community Compact were worked into the master plan update because that kind of organically came up from citizens who were following PACE and also participating in the master plan update. In the review process, we put it out for public review, but also internal review. I did flag there are areas of this that are literally impossible without that additional tax revenue. That doesn't mean we don't desire them, but we do not want to mislead the public that we can just, we're not magicians, right? Not to be so sarcastic about everything, but like we need resources to do some of those things. So some of that got stripped out appropriately. Certain elements were still in the most recent draft of the master plan, which I believe included things like prioritizing, although our operating position is clearly strained right now, that we continue to make forward progress on 10 and 20 year infrastructure investments that are never going to cost less and they're never going to get easier, like sewering the industrial park, continuing to prioritize infill and redevelopment of areas that we've already invested sewer in those 3 key areas, but also, again, really being aggressive on the 4th one that we need to build, which is the industrial park. Doing, some education and awareness raising on the existing financial relief that is offered for taxes, particularly for seniors, veterans, and individuals with disabilities. We do offer, quite a significant amount. And so that's something that we'll try to put on through HCS this year. The assessor's office has done a lot of awareness raising as far as we have the new local match senior means tested property tax exemption that was passed as a special law in the state when we did the most recent debt exclusion. So that's coming online. So there's components of it that are going to get incorporated into the master plan. That's subject to the planning board under state law approving it. I have no reason to think they won't, but I can't speak for the planning board. But so there's some components of that are policy level that we can continue working towards. That makes sense. But there were certain aspects that we would need funding to do that didn't make it in.
We can certainly bring it.
Yeah, and if there's certain elements of it that you are interested in or others are interested, we're happy to hear it. But there's pieces of it live on in the master plan. But was there any particular section that you were interested in, or
no, not necessarily.
Yeah.
As the conversations around the potential override advance, we can determine if we want to have that be part of the discussion. And also being said, anything that comes up in these discussions that folks want a deeper dive into, ping me and we can make sure to bring it to an agenda so we can dedicate time and depth to any of these topics. Before we go to Finance Committee, other questions or comments? Okay, Finance Committee, all yours.
We should be pretty easy, actually. So we don't actually determine, we don't unfunded mandates and that sort of thing. We have to go to the boards. So we spent the last few meetings divvying up everyone so they have their boards that they need to go to and ask these questions and bring it back to the general meeting. So everyone's supposed to do that before November 4th. So that way we can, see how it's going right before town meeting and then plan when we can get together, have further discussion. We did talk about the possibility of not doing an override versus doing one, and then the different types of overrides. It seems generally like people would like to do an override, and we haven't taken a vote yet, but it seemed to me, and you can let me know if you feel differently, but it seemed to me like people were looking for the menu, looking at that one a little bit more seriously because we failed with the other style. I did take a look at the list that you gave me, and so because the committee was asking about that as well, like what have other people done,
Sure.
what has been successful, and I dropped it into AI to see if it could tell me, what the success rate was, and I haven't actually checked AI myself to see if it's correct, but 77% of the menu overrides went through versus 56% of the omnibus override. So it's a little bit more effective. I have looked through
Massachusetts and over a specific period of time? Or?
for the past 3 years, which is the data that Connor sent out. But if you look at the sheet itself, it does seem like there are certain towns where they just have a culture that they pass, and then you have towns that have a culture that don't.
Yes.
So the ones, it's a little bit different when you have one that fails versus then you try one, it fails, and then you go to a menu. Like, that's not always successful. If you fail, a lot of times you fail even with a menu. There are a few cases. I think AI pulled out 4 cases where they went from a single ask to a menu and it worked, but it didn't seem great, and I didn't look at those in detail to see how close were they the first time either. So I have to do a bit of a deeper dive into it, but hopefully I have more answers for you next time. And then hopefully too, everyone has met with the department heads. I know we did talk to the fire chief last night, and that was really, really sad to hear how much our firefighters were struggling, and what they need to do, especially since they take such pride in taking care of us, and knowing that they're not going to be able to do that with that service anymore. So I'm sure we'll hear lots of stories like that when we go to talk to the different boards. Did you want to add anything to that, Mike?
No, that's exactly.
Kelly, Jim, and Jamie, do you have those in a format that you could share with the board, with the committee rather? So when we go back to do our report outs, Jamie and I are prepared to, because there was so much information and it was fantastic. Actually, more information than I expected, so I really think the process appears to be working. So if they're in a format that you can share, that'd be great, and then I think it'll help kind of keep these conversations moving forward between the boards. And again, I'll just reiterate, definitely send me potential items for agenda, for future topics for agendas, because we can always make sure to capture them. The second part of this agenda item was around potential override, and each representative gave some perspective on where their board stands with this, and things we're coming to, I would say, general consensus. I know we don't have official votes in place yet, but given that, it's really going to be important, as Jamie kind of started to map out earlier on engagement and process. You have town meeting coming up in November. How do we want to consider using time at town meeting to draw attention to the fact that we're having these conversations and start to invite the public to give us input? And I don't want, I also want awareness around this, so it doesn't seem like this is happening in a vacuum. It's not. Anybody can come to these meetings. So every once in a while, I've added a section on public comments every agenda. So if you hear folks are talking about these topics out in the world as you're talking to soccer games and wherever else you may be, grocery shopping, let them know they can come here, and we'd love to hear from them. Also, emails. I was talking to Connor about the potential of setting up an email address that we can use to gather information, which I think might be a additive aspect of this. So, yes.
So we're going to start doing some community meetings. Jim's looking at schedules. We're going to bring it to school committee, and we're going to try to meet, just have times where a couple school committee members are somewhere at an event, at a coffee shop, something where people can just come talk to us. And so this could be actually a good way for us to get feedback on that as well.
Yeah.
Good. Yes, I've done a couple. I will not lie. Regrettably, the last one I did, we had some dedicated school committee and select board members go, but no one from the public. So that's tough. reasonably friendly guy. I will bite. So,
Where did you host it?
Queeset House. And so we're going to do the third one, I think, on the 27th. We got to find we got to get a date.
Does Shaw's have it? Can you like go to Shaw's Starbucks and?
I don't know if I'm going to stand at Shaw's, but I will think of something like that. I appreciate it.
Is that what you're envisioning, standing outside?
Like somewhere where everyone goes.
I don't know. I just feel like
Queeset
this,
House,
like
you have to go out of
you're
your
like
way.
rushing in to like grab the rotisserie chicken because your meal prep failed. Like I don't, like I'm the last guy you want to see. Like, have you thought about structural deficit statement? No, in all seriousness. It's just gonna hit me. I mean, we're gonna try and find somewhere that there's some more foot traffic organically, so I can try and peel some people off. A couple of people did come to the first one we did here that were not elected officials, which I love all of you, but that was good. And we'll do another one, and I think select board members might follow, take a similar page from school committee, but I think a lot of that's going to be important because I think everyone on the committee here, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, is we're trying to be cognizant of like we're not doing PACE again, right?
Yeah.
And we're not PACE, and it's not only a bandwidth issue, a timing issue. It's just it didn't work, and so some of this is going to be maybe divide and conquer and smaller conversations, and it's really back to your question, Jen, of how how does the subcommittee and the representative boards feel about somebody from the subcommittee, giving a brief, I guess, invitation to feedback to folks at town meeting. Obviously, there's nothing they're voting on related to the budget subcommittee that night, but because we want to hear from people on this, right? And
Yeah, and there's multiple items in here that reflects the state we're in right now.
Correct,
Where things are headed, so I think it's feels like a missed opportunity if we're looking at a timeline where we have to consider a ballot vote in April. So, my proposal is that we plan on having some sort of very short and targeted presentation. Probably Jackie, it would fall on you and me, but I'm open to volunteers if anybody wants to participate in giving that short presentation. Again, I'm being very short and focused, just budgets and committees looking at this. We're not following the process pace followed. There's some community opportunities for community input, very targeted and to the point. We don't need to open up and rehash the facts.
Right.
They've been stated.
And I'm going to make a plug again to keep the election on a Tuesday and not move it to the Saturday. I'm gonna keep asking.
Or not the Saturday of school break.
Not the Saturday.
Right. Well,
Open
the same would be
polls
true if
at
it's the
7 a.m.
Tuesday of school break.
Yeah. Well, it would be the Tuesday after.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when we vote on that. I can't recall the timing.
it has to be before the new year, and you also can just simply take no action, and then it defaults to the 4th April, a 4th Tuesday in April.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sending an email to select board, I think that would be helpful to make sure it stays on all of our radar and just give us some perspective as a group. And Jamie and I can bring back the feedback from here, obviously, but I think I will say that the board takes emails very seriously and responds. So it would be a good way to just make sure we hear your perspective and it doesn't get lost. And
For what it's worth, the dates that Jackie was suggesting for the community outreach, we were trying to look at events that are at least happening around the schools. So a football game or the play is happening in late October-ish or something. So whether we stand out an hour before the play opens and stand by the auditorium and identify ourselves as the school committee, that you can come talk to us or something. We haven't figured out all those details, but trying to piggyback off of events that people are already going to rather than setting up, come to the town hall at 8 p.m. or something and try to meet us type thing. So
I'm wondering if we should add a standing agenda item that just covers dates for any kind of outreach so we can support each other and amplify that with
That would be great.
Yeah, so why don't can we add it as a standing agenda item? And that way also will kind of keep us thinking about new ways to do it.
Yeah, we're going to come up with a couple of dates at our next meeting next week.
this is very new, so
Yeah.
we haven't really talked about it with the whole board.
Will we have things that we can hand out at those events? I'm always not sure what can we actually say and what do we hold back on. So if we're doing an official event as a finance committee, can we have something that we can hand out?
and defer to you.
Well, I mean, as far as what you could say, anything we've discussed in open session is fair game, you know. And if it depends. Like you're an elected official. You have a right to talk about how you feel about the state of the town's finances. If you start going down a path of like getting into more your opinion as a resident and a parent, if you want to say, you know, I often do. I'll tell people like I'm speaking as an individual now about how I feel about this. This is what the town's doing. I wouldn't. I appreciate the thoughtfulness, but I wouldn't let it stop you, I guess is what I would say there. As far as materials to hand out, I mean, we certainly don't have it now. I think perhaps if the budget subcommittee is, I also want to caveat that I have not talked to the town moderator, so we would need the moderator's permission even for an informational share and say, come meet us later. But the moderator's been great about that in this town, so I don't want to take it for granted, but I want to flag that. But perhaps if the subcommittee says, okay, well, you know, we're targeting the holidays basically for starting to get budgets put together and, you know, potentially April ballots. You know, if you're going to do one or two meetings that are not like this, some kind of listening session. Again, I'm sensitive to just doing PACE again under a different name, but we want to hear from people. So maybe if there's going to be, and we should talk about it now, a couple of listening sessions of the subcommittee itself in later November, maybe early December before school vacations and stuff and everyone's going to be gone. We could come up with some way to have some of that as a handout, but obviously our funds to do so are like close to non-existent.
I was just thinking, so my daughter is in a play in November at the middle school, or actually I think the play will take place at OA, but there's a lot of parents that come through. They probably are not going to have a ton of time to talk, so maybe if they could grab something as they walk by.
It's not impossible. I guess it's just we need to know what are we directing them to do. What's the call to action? What are we asking people to do? Is there an email set up for budget subcommittee? You know, send us your concerns about services, your thoughts about services. I mean, we could do something like that.
Will there be anything about what's happening with the fire department? Because I know they're going to be educating the public too. Will there be?
For us to hand out at town meeting, no. It's just we try to.
I mean, after town meeting, right?
Yes. We don't know exactly what that looks like yet. We need to bring a consulting team on board. We need the funding from town meeting to do that. But you know, that's going to be focused more around informing people about what the operating changes are. It won't be, you know, go vote for an override, as people might put those two things together. But we want to be very careful not to misrepresent to people what that article about the fire department's for. I think this is part of what, and why I'm glad Jen's bringing up, like we all collectively need to decide like what are we collectively trying to accomplish and direct the public to do? Because I hear you and you're right. Like there's nothing more frustrating to people, and they don't, if you can get some of their time, be like, hey, we have all these problems. They're like, well, what do I do? They're like, well, I don't know. Right. So I don't know if it's setting up, you know, an online survey we can direct people to, hard copies of it, a couple listening sessions. I'm just very gun shy of like we did all of those things with PACE, and like we tracked it, and the click through and utilization was extraordinarily low. So we have so few resources. I just think we want to talk about like what's going to have the most impact to get. If the end goal is for the subcommittee and members of it to hear from people what are their concerns, like how do we do that? And if the committee says, well, let's have a QR code and a handout and a dedicated email, like we'll work and find a way to do that and get you some stuff to hand out. We need to have something to tie it to. Of, you know, are we setting up a couple listening dates between now and the holidays? And
Yeah, no, I think timing-wise, the preliminary budget will come together in December, correct? So we should start thinking about community input rather, prior to that.
Prior to that, yeah, because I don't want to overinflate the importance of like, there is nothing in a budget message I'm going to put out that we don't know.
No, yeah.
Now, right, and so I don't want to hold you all up. Like you all know where Easton is, and it's not good, right? You don't need to wait for another report from me or from the superintendent. Like we're going to do our jobs. We're going to put that stuff together. You know, but I think the important information is we cut 8% of our workforce going into this year. Mm-hmm. Class sizes are up. Departments are under strain. Fees are going up. The cost of doing business is going up. healthcare is going up again next year, and we're facing this down again.
Yeah.
So where today, right? Where are you as a citizen on how do you feel about some people? And it's not I think it's so hard. And I appreciate you saying not othering. Like, these are such hard conversations to have with people, especially with somebody like me, because they're going to think that I obviously view if like you voted no, that was a moral question, and I'm not taking that opinion. But some people may be living in town right now and say I'm okay with the level of service I'm getting, and we want to hear that too.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't want to, contrary to my typical inclinations, I don't want to hold you all back and say that there's some kind of predicated report or process or like key date that you all need. Like, we know what we...
I'm thinking more in the context of budget, preliminary budget happens, and then if we are to proceed with an override and say it's a menu, there's now a short window of getting that together.
Yep.
So the input we really want is on
Front end.
what the override might look like, and the budget informs that, of course, in terms of like what the asks will be. But it doesn't hinge on it. But it really is like that. Once the budget's out, the asks start getting developed, and we want the input before that, which is why that November, December timeframe for listening and input is, I think, key.
Right, but even before the budget's out, I think we're all still wrestling with like super foundational questions that aren't even necessarily budget of like to do or not to do it all, right? Menu or not, right? I mean, those are things we can start having conversations about now, in my opinion. If anyone here feels uncomfortable with that, this is a place to talk about. But I think
most of us already are.
Yeah, right.
All of us are in our lives.
And citizens were during PACE. There was people, asking, can we do a menu? Can we do this? So I think we can start that now.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, if you just back it all out, if you're looking at a April 4th Tuesday in April, you need 35 days statutorily of the select board to vote a ballot. So the board will need to know exactly what the override question or questions, if it's a menu, say, and dollar amounts by mid-March. And if you need to know that by mid-March, really, ideally, you have that in pretty solid draft form by late January, mid-February?
Well, the other thing is I want to make sure this group feels comfortable when they make the recommendation that they're behind, to do it or not to do it, and menu versus omnibus versus any other option. So it feels like we would need to have that decision made by December as a committee of what the official approach is for a vote.
I mean, I think our board was along the lines, like, if there's going to be more town positions cut, the citizens have a right to have a say in that. And so even if we don't think it's going to pass, it's, they should be the ones to make that decision.
You mean via menu?
Via menu. Yeah. But I mean, looking at the menu ones, general operating did the worst. And then fire and police were at the top, and schools was in the middle.
I am not excited for general government's chances. We have no illusions about that here. There's very few people who, are necessarily thinking of a value add of administrative and finance positions, which is disappointing, but I get it. That's one of the struggles of menus, right?
Yeah.
Administrative and finance positions and risk management positions actually are essential to police and fire departments succeeding. But we recognize we just want to hear something from people, and some people say no. The answer is there's no version of this that is acceptable, and that's okay. But for people who, if it looked like this, okay, well, what does that look like, right? And I think there's enough. The factual record is there, so.
Yeah. So let me kind of recap it. I do want to people's perspective. Oh, Jim.
I was actually, for example, in terms of materials, maybe I need to watch the last select board meeting, but the waste management conversation is interesting as a citizen. How does passing an override keep my trash bills lower or something? There are mechanisms like that where I feel like technically probably with the next contract with waste management, it's going to go up no matter what, but how much worse would it be for me as a citizen if we can't even use the waste management contract anymore and just privatize trash entirely? I feel like those are ways we can communicate to people on how that would impact them.
Yes, and those are the details that I think will become more particular and specific through the holidays and into the new year. Whereas the kind of philosophical questions where we're at now of approach and style, or we're not even. I think we need to get that done too.
Yeah, so should we go for a menu like DPW? Here's the impact of this not happening. Here's what happens if it doesn't
Right.
pass.
Which, and again, we were super clear what
Oh,
the
yeah,
department
absolutely.
level impact was on the omnibus, but it's still, I think there's, it's,
Didn't
but
pass, so.
when you have an omnibus, what's literally written in front of people is super generic when they're at the polls.
Right.
And so it creates a certain onus on people to have
Engaged,
engaged prior, right? And so something germane to this that I've been taking a look at with legal counsel and the chair of the select board, but I think would be interested in the subcommittee's perspective is you're all familiar with a red book that you get as a citizen of Massachusetts on state ballot questions every couple of years. They have like a kind of
Summary.
of
And a
here's what
for
this
and
ballot is
against.
and then a for and against. There's a state law that municipalities can accept to do the same thing for local ballot questions. That comes with a cost. You need to now mail something to every house in town. But when we've done these override times, we send multiple postcards to every house in Easton. And even we're clearly making a contact point of it's getting in people's mailbox, but it's saying, come spend time and do something and engage. And that obviously is not translating. And I'm not saying that criticizing people, I'm just stating the facts.
Yeah.
And so that could be an option for us to consider too, which is, every single house gets I don't know if it's actually red, so don't quote me on that when it's local, but like a municipal ballot book that has a neutral factual statement of this is what this does. And then there's a kind of editorial, here's why I say yes, and as somebody else having the no perspective, maybe that helps. I don't know the answer there, but that could be an option. That's on the tail end here, right? When we're talking about getting from here to there. So
Do you need the town meeting vote for that?
no, under state law, it's select board acceptance. So that's something I assume the select board's probably going to be talking about soon. I don't know if anyone here has any immediate feedback to that. If you do, I'm curious
I
to hear.
personally read it, but I like it. It's a real, it's like the Cliff Notes too,
Yeah.
right?
No, it's very
If you want to
informative.
go get more information, there's all the places to go get more information, there are all the links and everything, so I think they're fantastic.
You're talking about as a citizen getting a red book. Yeah. Yeah.
People still have to read it,
Right.
but to your point, it's
It removes a link in the chain. It's no longer
Correct.
saying go read something
go
somewhere else.
to the open house or
Right.
get online and look at this.
Right.
It's like right there.
So I don't know. Does anyone in finance committee or school committee have any feelings on that? Or
I always read those. I find them very interesting.
yeah, but as far as for municipal or a ballot question, is
I mean, that's interesting. It would have never occurred to me that we would be
not
able
a
to do
not a ton
something
of
like
towns do it. But I think I'm happy to get a little more information and
It's
bring
a-
it back.
To Kelly's point, it's a handout, possibly too, when we're
Yes. Yeah.
at functions.
Oh yeah, and it would be like, here you go.
So how, would you have like one question, say, be funding for the fire department, funding for the police department? Would it talk about like specifics that the money would go to, or just kind of overall? I mean, I know we haven't talked about this at all. I'm just trying to think of how it would work in kind of this framework.
Are you talking about the information book?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. So I just want to see, like, as a kind of immediate reaction, if people are interested, I will try to get smarter about it
Yeah.
so we could talk more about that. Because it's one thing to have a red book if you have one ballot question, but then it's like, well, what if you have a menu that technically is 8 votes? Do you then have 8 layers in there? I don't know. I could find out and see if I can find communities who do it and what that looks like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
What is the cost around that?
It's another means of
I'm not
sharing information
I
if
don't
what
know,
we're doing
but I would
isn't
assume,
working.
a high 4 to mid 5-digit number, right? I mean, you have roughly 8,000 homes for mailing addresses for some of these things. But again, it's one of those things of probably go hit up the finance committee reserve fund, right? That's why we have one for unanticipated or unique or new things. So if the subcommittee or Stonehill gift or other donations, we don't have a communications budget to hit, but we could find a way for certain things like that for the benefit of educating the public on these are choices. But if people are interested, I'm happy to educate myself a little bit more and bring more information back.
I think that would be really valuable.
Okay. So I don't know, Kelly, as far as your question of like in the immediate term, what to hand out, I don't know. But I think if we talk about setting up a couple dates, there could be a very kind of just,
We couldn't create something on our own, right? Like it would have to go through approval.
No, you certainly, I mean,
think it's my idea was ours was more informal.
Well, in ours, we can also, whatever the listening session is, we can always, I mean, if we have one in October or the beginning of November, we can always remind people about town meeting, just to kind of.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the things we should talk about tonight is, does the subcommittee want to do a couple of listening sessions focused on this discussion with the community of what's your general feeling about the state of public services and education? And the override obviously failed. Are you comfortable where things are? Would you be comfortable if more cuts happened? Would you be willing to consider an override to prevent that? And if so, what does that look like? Is that something that we want to try to do?
I very much want that information. I don't know that what we've talked about so far will get us that information reliably.
What do you
Okay.
think is missing in getting that information?
Engagement.
So just in like the informal conversations that bubble up to, or what does engagement mean? Is it?
What I mean is you're getting a very, very small self-selected group
Yeah.
to provide their point of view. So you have an inherently extremely biased and extremely small sample.
Yeah.
So the information that you're talking about is precisely what we need. I'm not saying you don't get it. I'm just questioning, based on that fact, if there are not a lot of people eager to tell us that information and proactively coming to whatever forum has that listening session. Are we going to get that information, or are we going to get fragments that we either misinterpret or over-index on? So I'm questioning what comes out of it, not whether or not.
I feel like too, a lot of people don't even have enough information to have any opinions.
I feel like a lot of people, I've had people come up to me and straight up saying, if the override had been a menu option, I would have something different.
I had.
Then my reaction is, but that wouldn't have been sustainable.
Yeah,
Still.
but I had that before
Yeah.
we took the vote, but since the vote has happened, I haven't had anybody that has wanted to talk about it.
So people are talking about the things that are happening that they're starting to see affect them. Maybe that's the angle here, is that people are starting to notice certain things. For different people, it's different things, whether it's the schools or, trash is what's coming out. There's conversations. The stormwater was a hot topic at one point. People are noticing these things that are creating conversations. People say, well, what did you think would happen? And then conversations don't really go much further. I don't know, how can we leverage that? Like the way that people have actually felt an impact or seeing things so far, and making the connection to, in a more
Well, I think
impactful way.
to Leisha's point earlier, we don't know what the teachers are experiencing unless they come out and share that. So there's a lot of parents that might think everything is going well. Meanwhile, our poor teachers are being burnt out, and so we have to share some information. It can't just be a listening session, I feel like. I think we have to share some of the information that people aren't seeing yet.
So maybe it's an information session that budget subcommittee invites people to. You have a couple of the biggest department heads and speak about this is what's happening in our. But then
That's like pace then.
Then it's pace.
That's pace.
So I don't.
Yeah.
But I think
Exactly what it is.
we can
It is different though, because that was like, this is what we think is going to happen. Like the sky is falling and people are like, oh, sure. But now the sky really is falling and
I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to take myself out of it because I was on it, but we've been cutting for a while, and so we weren't talking about hypotheticals even then. I think, yes, now it's worse. But don't know. I mean,
of the work that was done before, people either rejected pays, and they said, "Nuh-uh, you're lying, nanny foo-foo," or they said, "We accept what pays was saying, and we're okay with the reduced services." And so that leads me to say,
What would be different
whether it's
this
one
time?
group or the other, how do you reach those groups?
Well, the people who said I'm okay with that, like, I mean, are they really okay with it now? Because, you know, and I think it gets.
I would say they're probably not,
Yeah.
but I do not personally sense those who are not okay are do the arithmetic, the half of the people who voted no that would then vote yes on something.
The biggest voter.
Of the people who didn't believe pays, I don't think that they're going to believe us informally telling them the sky has fallen.
And we have no data on the biggest group of voters, which were the non-voters, who chose to not have exercised their right to vote.
It's a good point.
You don't really know at all because, you know.
well, and you're not, and we won't until it's on the
That's
ballot
right.
again.
So
right?
it makes
It's-
it extra hard to figure out how to engage those people. Like, it was just a matter of showing up. Why didn't you show up? Rachel, because it felt like it absolved you of being part of this discussion, or did you not care?
I think also.
I don't know the answer.
So I was having this discussion with one of the citizens who did come to one of my office hours, and he gave me a really helpful piece of feedback. And he said, you know, the town always wants to talk about listening sessions or hearing people like, they told you what they want. You need to hear it. Right?
Through their vote.
Correct.
And the people that don't show up to vote have told you what they want
Correct.
too. They don't want to be
Right. So
engaged. They don't
where
care.
that's where.
They told us it was, yes, there's a message there, but there's a lot of whys that I mean.
But we're never going to know them.
No, we won't.
fundamentally lack the
But that
resources at
creates
this
the
level.
challenge to Mike's point about engagement. How do you
That's
engage
fair.
people when you don't know why?
Well, or I think the question is more, what's the utility of you know, are we doing performative engagement?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't want to go into
I
that space.
have
don't
a
wanna waste my
perspective
time.
that we ultimately need a solution to structural revenue deficit that we want to hear about when getting rotisserie chicken. Sorry, I just have to call back to that one.
It's like such a quality dinner.
It is.
It
You're not
works.
wrong. You're not wrong.
It's like
No, but
70%
seriously,
of my future time.
this is something that I think maybe it's a weak argument, but I think there's an argument to be made that a patchwork solution to the fundamental problems that we have is not a solution at all. That it's just another form of kicking the can down the road and may itself create further structural problem. For example, everybody shows up and says, got to fund the schools. And so now schools become the thing, and over time, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now the only people who want anything to do with Easton are people with kids, and everybody else says, well, I don't have kids, so they leave, right? And now we're creating a structural problem where we're funding one thing and not another. I don't want to get over my skis in that speculation, right? Just to say that coming in patchwork and well, let's fund the police and not the fire department, not the whatever it turns out to be, is a problem. And that in order to solve it, we do need substantial additional revenue. And the only way that we're going to get that is when people are experiencing
Affected.
yes. Not when we tell them your kid's classroom size is higher. I don't know my kid's classroom size. I don't go into the classroom and look.
Yeah.
And they're not paying attention either. I know, I've asked. Right? The issue comes is when they come home from school and say, well, I'm having a problem with this. We'll go talk to your teacher. I tried, but they're too busy. And they said, pay attention more in class. Here's some extra homework, right? That's when people are going to feel that there's a problem. When there's a tragic report of somebody having a bad outcome because an emergency response was delayed, when an emergency response was delayed to a problem because somebody hit a pothole that wasn't repaired, you get where I'm coming from. Until it's that, I don't think people are going to step up and say, yeah, maybe I should care.
You know what I really worry about that happens before that happens is because all of these people are giving 150% right now, that the people burn out before those things happen. So
I think we've crossed that Rubicon.
Sort of, but not enough.
I
not
don't agree with you.
You know, that's fine.
No, the morale is the worst it has been in my entire career.
But people are still not compromising. I'm not saying services haven't been compromised. I'm saying that not enough people have noticed it because people are still working hard. And yes, morale's awful.
Yes, no, but
I'm not talking about morale. I'm talking about the work people are putting in. Like your morale can be awful, and people are still doing their job.
No, but there are areas where we're just not doing
Yeah.
what stuff we used to do.
Course,
I mean, we're straight up responding to some people like, sorry, don't. We had a leadership meeting right after the override, and this is not what the people who work in Easton, the people who come to Easton, the people who serve this community want to do. People like Wendy, like Sean, like the folks on the superintendent's team, like the teachers we have, the firefighters we have, but we had a long and very hard conversation around we need to familiarize ourselves with the vernacular of I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. We do not have resources for that. Yeah. Because we have created a culture here deliberately that we are proud of, that the public deserves. We want this to be a great place because there's great people here, where we promote excellence through working hard and taking responsibility. But we there was a lot of discussions about this at PACE with finance committee. There's members who, they're not necessarily wrong, but like the approach of, there's a certain amount of irony that we have avoided being in this position for so long that it feels like an abstraction. Yet at the same time, it's a failure. That's impossible for both to be true. So there are things we're just not doing now. There are, if you look at Town Hall, a 2-floor building, and there's an east and west wing. On one floor, the east wing's closed to the public 20 hours a week. On the other floor, the west wing's closed for 40 hours a week. So there are people.
I know. But my point wasn't that. My point was that not enough people are feeling the effects of those things.
Oh, yes.
Because, yes,
correct.
I made a call to a town department 4 times now and keep on getting an answering machine. I know what's going on behind the scenes, so
Yes.
I have a lot of empathy and understanding, and it's something I don't know what I'm doing. But anyway, like I will call again because I understand that department is very understaffed and underworked. That's in my day-to-day life. That's an inconvenience that I wouldn't translate necessarily to like an override. But I'm in the weeds of it, and that's what I was trying to get across.
That's very true. I have gotten that
appreciate
feedback.
Yeah.
I have definitely gotten that feedback. Why did this not happen, or why is this different than last year? We regret we have reduced staff. We don't have enough, and I have been very loudly edified, I guess, that they are sick of hearing about the fact that the override didn't pass and that we are contributing.
Come on, seriously?
Yes.
They're actually, I'm sorry, that's an insane comment.
We are contributing to bad morale by continually talking about the override. And I said, that is our reality. That I'm not going to blame it on something else that isn't the cause. This is literally, here's the math. Like, this is math. This didn't happen. We don't have this. You're not getting that. And it's being on the people that are doing this work even harder than ever before. We are feeling the brunt of the blame for things not continuing. That is the cycle that we are finding ourselves in right now.
You're getting involved. This is a scare tactic thing.
100%, yeah.
That's the other piece of rhetoric out there. That this is still part of the scare tactics, which is absurd.
Which is why I go back to the point I made. Until enough people are uncomfortable enough, until the burning platform exists, there is no change. Yeah. And most of you know me pretty well, that I thought we needed a sizable override for a long, long time. And I'll stand behind that and argue for that for a long, long time. I'm just looking at it from the point of view as a member of budget subcommittee and part of town leadership. My focus my motivation is, how do we get to that end goal of some solution to the structural revenue problem that we have in this town? So that's where I'm coming from. The questions you're challenging me with are great. They're perfect. I can't imagine being more uncomfortable with taking a position than I am with the position that I'm taking. It's at odds with what I want, but I don't see how to get to what I think we need without it.
And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, when Jamie got vulnerable earlier, I cannot tell you how many times I've gotten in the car after our long select board meetings and cried, because it is just a lot. It's heavy, and I'm feeling it because of that, but I don't know people get that. It's not getting through. And I see what you're saying about people feeling the pain and the impact, but how do you do that before we've walked over that cliff and there's no coming back? Because I already feel like sometimes maybe we did walk over that cliff and talk about the staffing problems and the fact that in a couple months we've had 10 years of lost impact on, what our staffing looks like and the future, how it takes to build that back. When have you walked over the cliff versus when you've really walked over the cliff? I mean, have we? It's subjective in some ways, but this is a philosophical question. I really don't.
No, it is.
I don't know the
It's the right question, and again.
We all carry this heavy burden, and we try and almost have an academic analysis of how to figure out what people are thinking and how they can get them to react. And I don't know how you do that for voters that we don't even know what they're thinking because they.
I look at our role as leaders in town government to make the people in our community better off. Our role is to create the systems and the staffing and the morale and the attitude that makes Easton a place where people want to be, where people are, in point of fact, safe here in our town. And the paradox that we're faced with is, for the life of me, I sat here for most of this, much quieter than usual, for the life of me, cannot come up with a way to get to where we want to be that doesn't involve a step of, I guess we have to make it hurt real bad. And that's so antithetical, so paradoxical with how I view what our role is. And I'm saying it out loud and emphatically because I would really like somebody to say, dude, here's where you're wrong. No, you've misjudged this entirely. You missed this over here. And so, sorry, emphatic agreement.
No, I know, and that's the problem because we still don't have a solution. But
At his hand.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to call on you because you were on pace. And I'm curious to hear your perspective because you lived through, and other folks in here were involved in that as well too. But you lived through that experience. Now we're here. I really love to hear your perspective.
Sure. It's difficult. I grew up in this town. I think having gone through PACE, and I think I'm also in a unique position where maybe unique at this table, I don't have children yet. I have aging parents and grandparents in town. I think I have a perspective of someone my age who's trying to move into this town, or thinking about my parents when they were my age, could never afford to live in this town today for various reasons. But I think it's realistic that you're asking, the town of Easton's population is dramatically aging. I think, I don't want to be quoted, but I happen to remember the age of the average woman, I think, is 37. When you are looking at a population that is trending older than younger, the math and the people that have talked to me have talked about, unfortunately for the schools, sometimes there's a smaller shrinking student population, but that doesn't mean they don't have less needs than ever in terms of trying to provide for those students. But feedback from PACE I've heard, I may go all over the place, but I guess the reason I got my parents and grandparents up is they're trying to retire soon. I would like them to stay in town. I grew up with being able to go to my grandparents' house after school and after work, and it's a realistic conversation in my family. Can my parents, if they want to retire, continue to do that for my future children? These are not, the feedback from PACE ones that I heard was, you're asking too much all at once. You made it about values, that if you don't want higher taxes, you have bad values. When for a lot of people, it's a truly economic and family and personal, emotional decision. The math, like I said, the math, which is not always true. There are less students in the school district. People are getting older in town. Like, that is something that's not unique to Easton, but it is our situation. I mean, there's just all of these things that I think are coming together in the sense that, you know, if you want people to move here, you need to provide decent services. But it also can't outprice those people until they're in their 40s or 50s and able to buy a home for the first time. And these are just real national economic problems. So, that's my kind of bit of a rant there, but I think to its like, you're never going to get 100% of the voters to vote. They have spoken, 2/3 said do not raise my taxes. To some extent, I think it's up to the elected leadership to try to provide a better vision as to why you should either raise your taxes or better define this is what Easton provides until future vote changes. And again, if I'm off base, then I think it's up to Easton to some extent manage whatever they are given to the best of their abilities and help define exactly what it is that Easton does and does not provide for its citizens. Obviously within federal and state laws and what is required, which I think makes it extra challenging. We can't just say we're not going to provide schools or something dramatic, but we're not going to provide So I think that's really the wrinkle here to me. It's not so much maybe I'm different. As long as I live in Massachusetts, I don't envision myself living in any other town, so I'm here probably for life, but so I don't know, I guess how eroded certain services get, but I can see how that would be unattractive for some other people who might choose to leave or not have as deep roots here.
It does sound like, though, fees are going to go up no matter what. It's just going to be a different way, right? And so we're sacrificing the quality that we get from the town, but we're still going to end up paying pretty much the same thing, if not more, in the long run.
Yeah, and that's where trust and relationships, come in, and that's where I look to all of you as elected leaders. Like these are not administration and finance problems for myself and Dr. Cabral to solve at this point. We have jobs to do that are important, and we will do them. And we will provide the amount of services we can to the best of our abilities within the resources we have. But those resources comparatively are more scarce now than they've been in a long time, and the outlook is bad. And, I think that's a fair point, Jim. I did hear that too, that there was a certain wincing at the attribution of the override of values. I don't know how you uncouple them. That's hard, right? I think we want to not be binary, right? Yes, good, no, bad. But our budgets we adopt as a community do reflect our collective values, right? They reflect what, of finite resources, what do we as a people prioritize? So we'll do the best, and so our departments, we're going to do the best we can with what we have. It's just going to start looking different, and it's not going to be as good, right? There's no two ways around that. It just will not be. It already isn't.
I'm just going to add another dynamic to this whole thing, to your, what do we do? There is what I would consider in the scope of my life, a relatively recent phenomenon of whether it's the confluence of social media or how different leaders in the world act or how they communicate with one another. There is a phenomenon of people who will actively, in their campaign against information that's being put out, will actively just say things that are completely not factual, dispute things that are completely factual and data-driven and presented, I think, very clearly. And believed just because, it's online, so it must be true. And I hate to boil it down to that simplification, but people have come to me with facts that I can show them really clearly, well, where is that here? It's not, here's every line. Where is that? Well, I don't know where it is. That's okay, but I'm showing you that it's not here. Well, I don't believe you. Or she's lying, he's lying, they're exaggerating. And so we can keep pumping out information as much as we want, as long as that very dysfunctional form of communication exists and is accepted in our culture today. That is going to be a very hard thing. We can present it 15 different ways. As long as you have somebody there with a counter argument that looks credible, it kind of doesn't matter if it is, in my experience with some people and enough people that then speak authoritatively about it to others who will not come and ask direct questions or participate in these venues. I'm not really sure, Jen and colleagues, I'm not really sure how you get past that. I don't.
The whole world is trying to figure out how to deal with misinformation.
Yeah, I don't think. I don't know how to do that. So I don't think.
Like not believing in science and data.
Exactly.
And immediately responding to a fact with how you feel about it rather than engaging in discussion about.
Isn't all of this sort of coming back to when we talk about approach, like, again, Sean and I joke all the time, like, you want to be right, you want to be effective. Some days, a good day, you get to be both. You don't always get to be, right? And like, we are facing some extremely real challenges, some of which that even on pace, we were all very eyes open that even with a large omnibus override, like, and I'm relieved that it is now, like, we're entering a paradigm shift of like, it's not going to be fun. We're in for a bumpy ride and it's not just us. And hopefully that brings state level involvement that's needed for major reform. But unless and until that happens, it's going to be rough. People are stressed. There's a lot of hard things going on in their life. Cost of living is through the roof. Some of this then comes back to, like, we're talking about, do we do this engagement, that engagement, this listening? And again, I come back to that system. So people already talk to you. You got to listen to them. Is, whether our feelings about the structural effectiveness of a menu or not, that is one way to find out exactly what people may want, is it not? I mean, understanding all the misgivings that, like, okay, but then if you're behind the next year, people are upset. Well, I mean, we went 20 years of an override and we're still, people are upset. Like, that, it's kind of should get baked in, should it not? I mean,
we have $3 million though in one-time money in this year's budget that is not necessarily going to recur next year. I mean, it all can't recur next year.
it can't.
And where does that fit into a menu option?
Well, I think the way that we've talked about that is that we basically, forgive me, I'm obsessed. I don't know why it matters. My shoes are untied. I'm sitting at a table.
A common relief tonight.
It's a great question, and that was part of what motivated Pace's approach, right? Was we got to fix some structural issues, set some money aside for a future. We're going to be right back here. I don't know, but I think that's why the baseline budget is going to be probably horrifying, right? Because you can't do a menu unless the let's say you have a menu of 6 different choices. The budget of all 6 fail needs to be something that's not propped up with a meaningful amount of reserves, because then you're doing this again. And I could tell from hearing you, and I know that's true for everyone here, that you've gotten in a car after some of these meetings, or have talked to some of your staff, or hearing from some of the community and cried or just felt terrible. Like, I think some of our responsibilities as community leaders is, I recognize, like, I clearly don't have a right answer on approach, but as safely as we can, I do think we all have a shared interest of, like, I hate the phrase rip the Band-Aid off, but we need to get to the bottom, right? Because this uncertainty can't continue for years and years and years. And I think it's poison. And so, Wendy, to your question, yeah, you can't build a non-override budget going into 27 unless the override proposal is a large omnibus one, which I've heard, I think 0 people, maybe 1 person say they want. If that's not the approach that's going to be taken, then the baseline on override budget has to be extremely austere and not relying on significant one-time money, right? Because then so play it out. Let's say you put a budget forward and we're going to have this debate. We've had this debate in Easton at like half the town meetings I've presented a budget at. In the spring, there's been people saying this is so extreme. There's $5+ million in stabilization. Just move some of it, right? Because they're not wrong. For a parent whose kid is thriving in a program that about 200,000 will save for another year, and they look at this and they think these people are crazy, right? But it's if you allow it for that, then what's the argument for not for everything? And then you spend it all down to nothing. And then if we actually hit a recession, then like it's over, right? So. It's if there's an operating budget proposal for 427 that used $2 million more in stabilization to mitigate the cuts, and we had a menu override happen and $1 million for public safety got approved, we would still be in the red. And then people would have good reason to say, what on earth why did they put that forward, right? I mean, you're not even getting to black. So it's a good question. That's why we took the approach PACE took, but we're all having this conversation like that didn't work. So, sorry, Jim was asking.
I keep looking at
Oh, I really appreciate something you said, which was pointing out the comment about how the values piece didn't land. Because I remember that resonating with me during a time that yes, values, but it's impactful to hear you say that was something that a lot of people felt was out of touch. And the reality right now is actually we're beyond values. Like we're in straight up needs territory. It gets back to the framework that Dr. Cabral framed earlier with regressive strategic, just we are in the straight up needs moment right now. So the values conversation is out the window. It's beyond irrelevant at this point. And I think that's helpful that you flagged that. Just as I'm thinking about this.
Can I say something? I know you're about to say something. Can I comment on that? I agree that comment was exceptionally insightful. And I very frequently, in forums that I participated in, framed things as values-based. And I was very, very careful never to say this value good, that value bad. And I know I will get accused of that not being the case, but I was beyond conscious of that. Point being, it was a statement to say, to the mis and disinformation side of it, let's try to solve that. And then if you still have a problem with it, we can say, you have to make a value decision. We're all making value decisions every day of our lives, and we're looking at that. The comment that I want to make to that is that same phenomenon of mis and disinformation, I would argue, created a permission structure for people to say, well, it's not about values. It's about economics. It's about this, that, or the other. And I even heard a few people say, and I remember commenting to them, listen, it's fine that you come down and you say, my family's economics, I have to value that. It would be wrong of me or anybody else to ask you to not value your economics. But you can't step away from it and use mis and disinformation and this permission structure that's getting created by people saying, oh, they're just bludgeoning you with values. You can't get away from that and say, oh, well, therefore, I have affirmative permission to pretend there's no values involved. I just had to comment on that because that notion of permission structure to say it doesn't matter, it's all fake.
At the end of the day, if it is purely or even majority an economic situation, then it is what it is. And it doesn't matter really what we tell people. Right. If they want to pay for whatever this level of service is, they may feel pain from that, but that's irrelevant if their goal is to continue to afford to live in this town. They want the level of service which goes with that, or they have to have the level of service which goes with that if it's pricing them out.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's just the taxes that are pricing us out, right? It's everything that's pricing us out. It's groceries going up, right? If I need an ambulance now, am I going to pay more for the private ambulance? My health premium's up. So, I think we're just a small piece of it, and we're sort of, I don't know. The way the conversation went was that we're mismanaging everything, and that was really, I think, it became personal attacks, misinformation, and that was, I think, really hard for the leadership to experience. And that's why I don't really know what the answer is for getting information out there, because you're almost just setting yourself up for more of that.
I guess I would say I feel like political spin's always been a thing. It's just gotten faster and easier to digest, right?
It's definitely gotten different.
It's definitely gotten more personal and
you see the
inappropriate.
The racist text messages that were released from a group, right? And then rather than attacking the text messages like you would expect, now you see people attacking the people that are calling them out for that. And that was not something that I was 5 years ago.
I guess I meant more on raising taxes. Certain issues, sure. I think it's more I was talking about raising taxes. There's a spin to both sides. I don't know.
Well, I think when we're in an environment where the cost of everything is exploding, and in so many ways, in a way that all of us as residents and consumers have literally no control over, this is one area you do, right? It's really hard to get people to volunteer in one area. Again, counter to what some suggested, and counter to what some people's experience may have been, depending on the very specific value of their home. It is a fact that in the past decade, the average tax bill's grown about 3.5% in this town. Mm-hmm. And that's lower than the state average, despite the debt exclusions. That does not mean that that's a universal experience. There are some folks who, there's been a lot of homes sold in their neighborhood, and that really pumped up their value, and they're getting hit, and that's hard. But if everything else has gone up 25%, and you're considering a multi-$100 increase, and you actually control that when you have no control over gas, right? You have no control over your food. You have no control over your health care. We are set up to lose, right? Unless you have an ingrained culture, as Kelly identified in some towns, of this is the way we do business and a price we are willing to pay.
How did they get that culture? How did they cultivate that?
Well, there's no one answer to that. I think the reality is in a lot of those communities, the cost of living is substantially higher than Easton. And there are people who are priced out, and older generations who are pushed out, and newer generations with money who come in, and they become the new. It's a hard and vicious cycle. There's a cost, no matter what. And I think we're in this kind of strange middle zone, as I feel often in Easton. We talked about a Bermuda Triangle with a lot of the funding things we're in, and when we've talked about it a lot with just the experience of living here. You drive around, this is beautiful architectural wonders, these amazing facilities, infrastructure projects going on left and right, development happening, amazing private institutions, things like Langwater. Look at your library, look at the Queenston. There's people have good reason to not think there's anything structurally wrong, right? And we've been able to provide that for a very long time and done an exceptional job. And now we are facing headwinds that we haven't, and we do not have the tools to meet. And that's, we talked about we're going through a period of time. We have a lot of our workforce that haven't experienced RIFs up until this year, right? We have a lot of our workforce who haven't seen layoffs because we've worked very hard. You touched on it, that it is counterfetical, I think, to the elected leadership of this community, of the appointed leadership, of the staff here. The culture here is to do as much good as we can for as long as we can until we can't anymore. But the problem is that sets you up for a dynamic where you are so lean that once you start cutting, it's just like, how did this happen in 6 months? How did we get here? Because we were down to skin and bone. And so that's not going to be a culture that changes overnight. And so then I think that comes back to the question where we all need to answer. And I so appreciate the conversation from all the members and particularly the elected officials of like, we're talking about budget department level information, and I think there's just like fundamental value questions here and approach questions that are really more important that we're having a great conversation about. But I don't know.
So we did have this conversation. The initial question was around how we wanted to approach engaging the community coming up to town meeting, like what our game plan looks like coming up to town meeting happening, and then what we do after. I don't feel like we have a strong feeling on that, but we kind of do need to have
I just think we don't know.
we have to have an answer tonight because a meeting before about whether we're going to present it in November, for example.
I was talking
I'm not
about
saying for
major
the override.
engagement.
We have time to figure out those pieces, but there's certain engagement that the clock is ticking on now.
Sure.
And we could choose to do nothing. I mean, we could say we're not ready, but I think we're going to lose a window of opportunity to at least inform people. I don't know how much value it will bring in terms of, I don't know.
Well, it might at least start people contacting us after that about pros and cons, if nothing else. Like, you're crazy, don't do this, or yeah, that's a good idea, how would this work?
Yeah, I feel like I feel like it is absolutely critical that there's an opportunity for the public to weigh in. I know, Mike, your point is well taken about the bias of folks who respond to that and the gaps and what we would be missing from that self-selecting group of folks who choose to participate. But I don't know that we have an answer for that with the amount of time we have. So we have to do something, but we choose not to. I personally think we should leverage the opportunity for town meeting to at least talk about what we're doing here and open up the opportunity for the community.
So how do you see, would you see it as a presentation? Would you see it as just like a talk?
5-minute thing that you and I get up there, 2 slides. Yes, Jim?
Could it just be, here's what we've stopped doing, and list some of those things that the town of Easton and the schools are no longer providing, or the reductions in service being provided? Here's what we're walking into next year so far with the updated projections of the deficit, and that we have to cut this much. Here's what we don't know. Here are the variables we don't know. Health insurance, whatever else is coming, contract negotiations, and then
For November?
not a number. I guess I'm just saying like.
No, I said for November.
I think it.
And we're considering an
way of
override.
showing
Like
what
that's 3
already
slides,
happens.
2 or 3 slides of just factual.
Yeah.
This is what our leadership team has decided to do based on the
it's
money and
amazing.
resources we have, and
If we could do some slide that starts to capture just here's what's already happened. I don't even know if we need to get into what is being planned, because in some ways this is representative of the really difficult decisions that.
I think I like his plan, though. Say these are some of the things we're considering, because that might be like, oh, I have an opinion on that, or I don't like that, and I want to go talk about that.
That's up to.
and like I think it'd be nice we're contemplating another override for fiscal year 27, and then not right after, but do it before public comment, and then let people talk. Is that?
So there's not just general public comment.
I guess.
I was thinking it would just be like
just informative.
budget is.
Well, it just has to be like as a matter of like there are articles at town meeting that are being voted on, and the debate has to be within the scope of a warrant, and it's moderator's discretion on allowing like the tricentennial or pace say like, hey, here's a report out to town meeting, and here's where you engage later. I think the reality is, if you do something like that, a brief summary of like, hey, here's where the town stands since June 10th, this is the things that people might have been seeing, or maybe you're hearing for the first time, this is what we're facing next year. The budget subcommittee wants to hear what people's feelings are on the state of our services now. You're going to hear some of the impacts tonight, and here are some dates to engage on that.
Yeah, that was essentially what I was thinking.
you know,
It was a quick 5-minute thing.
And then, will those conversations and that feedback, Jim, happen probably through the articles, like when we're talking about funding the transition to private ambulance? Almost certainly.
Yeah, that's where
Right.
education comes in, is the actual discussion on things like this. I think we'll get a good temperature read on that conversation.
Do you think a lot of people will be there?
I don't know.
It's interesting. November is typically not, so my gut would say no, but I've been convinced that there's enough interesting things on here in terms of engaging things on here that it may not be a typical November. But who knows?
Brainstorming. What if we grabbed 60, 90 minutes prior to special town meeting? See if we can get Kate there early and invite people to show up and discuss in an open format. Use the microphones, use all the elected leaders and the chiefs and folks will be there in the room, and say, hey, we can advertise it however we think we want to, but we're all going to show up beforehand, make it clear it has nothing to do with it's not town meeting, but since many people may be going to special town meeting, we're available. If you'd like to come at any
For
time.
an informational update on the state of the town
And that we're facing the same problems next year, except worse. Would you like your voice heard?
I really like that idea. Is that something that would be workable from a logistics standpoint?
Yeah, we would have to
Not a-
move some things around compared to what we typically do. Finance committee is usually having a meeting at 6, select board are having a meeting at 6, but it's not, of all the ideas I've heard tonight, I think that, I don't know. If a committee, what do you all think? Is that something, I think 90 minutes is too much, to be clear, because town meeting's already going to be a few hours, so you show up at 5:30, you're going to be there till midnight,
right.
That's pretty brutal.
I'm not sure I like the idea that I just suggested.
Maybe.
No, but I think that's fair, because Jim, you're asking, and then people can give comment, we really can't. And again, one of the things that makes people feel super frustrated is getting a process explained to them why they can't speak. It doesn't matter if it's true. It's super aggravating. So perhaps if it's just a public meeting at 6 of 15-minute tops update from budget subcommittee on where the state of the town is, and
I put everything on one single slide
that's
and
hard.
project it. It doesn't have to be all the details.
Yep.
It just has to. The point is the engagement. You're going to spur engagement with. We're going to. Based on our preliminary numbers, we're going to have to let go of 40 teachers. I'm making that up, obviously. You can expect this impact to the police.
Well, we could say we went into this current year and eliminated 50 jobs, and that was a year with budget increases. We were looking at a year of zeros, which is worse.
Yeah, I would be nervous about putting numbers on anything.
Yeah.
Whatever we
won't have them.
say, but it needs.
By November.
Well, we can argue about that afterwards. Do we like the idea of giving people the chance to?
Well, I don't think there is an afterwards, unless you all want to schedule a special meeting of budget subcommittee between now and
No,
then.
I just mean anybody can put anything they want on the
Actually,
slide.
this is a good way to set up the listening sessions after too. If folks then want to come back and sit on it after and come back and talk to us, we have
But,
2 sessions after.
so what do you all think of that idea, though, of having basically a pre-meeting that's on the floor of town meeting, so that way, instead of okay, here's all the formalities of town meeting, we have to get into this warrant. Here's Jen and Jackie, you have 3 minutes, no one can ask questions, and then into business.
Oh, I like this.
So I just need to be, I'm going to be away that weekend. I'm coming back. I'm coming back that Monday, and I will be back before town meeting. But I won't be back 3 hours before town meeting. So I just need to be.
Well, so then maybe it's somebody from finance committee or Jim with Jen. Not to told you all, but how do we feel about that?
The presentation part is going to be quick. It's really an
I mean,
opportunity.
I'm going to be there for town meeting, so I can do whatever you want at town meeting or even right before.
Yeah, I don't want you to feel stressed rushing in and then being like, this is chaos and being thrown to.
Yeah, the point is not, we're not the important part there. The
Right.
important part
It's
is the
not
people
engaged.
getting a chance to talk, ask their questions. They're gonna wanna argue. Maybe this is the place where they get to argue. I don't know, but just, point is, I wouldn't stress whether
Yeah.
any one of us is there or you have to be there. But you know what I'm saying.
No, yeah, exactly. The content, it's literally just opening the meeting,
Yeah.
throwing out some facts. Like, I agree with you. It's 1 to 2 slides, and it's not, the facts were already laid out by pace over a span of a year. The only new thing is what's happened since, and that.
And in continuing refinement of new information coming in that is nearly universally bad.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
that's part
About
of what's
the- about-
happened and happening. So
Yes,
it's like,
no,
this
I
is
mean
the way
about
we're
what's looking forward as
Yeah.
far as for revenue expectations.
That's why it's 2 slides. It's like what's happened since.
Yeah, and what
where
we're
going.
staring down, and
That's
please
it.
talk to us. And yeah, I mean, I'm very sensitive. You joke they say I have to be there. I'm very sensitive. I talk too much. If you guys spend 10 to 15 minutes, right, and if it's framed as a back and forth Q&A, I mean, 45 minutes, that can be like 6 people getting to ask a question and have a detailed answer. I don't know if that's constructive.
That's the biggest reason I said put it all on one slide. I don't even think this needs anything other than an introductory remark.
Right.
I'm literally thinking 2, maybe 3 minutes, and it's a slide with the hit you over the head information that we choose to put on it. In other words, anybody comes, half the people won't even come to the room at the beginning of it anyway. They'll come in because they showed up early to town meeting. But it's a chance to come in and they can see that, and it's a open back and forth. The only reason I commented maybe Kate can moderate it is to have people relinquish the microphone kind of thing.
That's the only challenge that might be if people are rolling in over time, it might be really disruptive because people come down that corridor talking full blast, and that's my one reservation with it, now that you're talking about.
Put a sign up, this, you come and be quiet or something.
Yeah, I mean, if we were
or
going to do this, we would incorporate it into the general messaging about town meeting, and like at a special, it's implicit. It's implicit. People must have read the messaging because it's not on the same day every year, right? So it's one thing to show up the third Monday in May because it's always the third Monday in May, but especially you have to have sought that information to an extent.
Okay, if you think that's manageable.
I think it's manageable. I think the question then becomes format, right? Here's where we're going. Give us your feedback. Is it?
Are you okay with doing that?
Yeah, what's the specific ask? Like, are we looking
Yeah,
for
what-
feedback on how to process?
Sounds like it.
You're all looking at me.
Well,
Well, if Jackie's unable.
it was your idea, in fairness. So.
Before town meeting. Yeah.
I will do my best to get there.
No, I can. Yeah, I can.
Well, I guess, but I mean, format, is it one slide that's super high level, a few reps or budget subcommittee say this is what's happened since June 10th and this is what we're looking at next year. We're trying to figure out the least bad path forward, and these are I won't say bad, these are community choices, and we want to hear, how are you feeling about services in town? What do you want to see, and what do you want us to focus on? I don't know. I mean, and then is it just general?
For what it's worth, I'm not like an overly emotional person, so I would not want to relay my emotions to the people. But yeah, if it's fact-finding and informational, that's fine.
I mean, I think what you said about showing what has been cut already, because like we've been talking about, a lot of people have no idea. So, I mean, I think that would be impactful. This is what's been cut. There's going to be more. You're
Well,
saying
also,
more next year.
this is what's changing, right? You have to raise fees.
Right.
And this is, weren't people complaining that you didn't advertise that you were raising fees?
Right.
And so now here's an
And we were also
opportunity to
getting
let them know at
complaints
town
like,
meeting.
well, you're going to raise fees anyway, even if the override passed, so what does this have to do with the override?
Yeah, that's where I think some of that too is challenging, because you don't want to necessarily do a one-to-one correlation with every single thing going on, right? Trash got brought up. I mean, those are structural forces that are not in our favor, whether an override passes or not. Our ability to have staff manage those programs is definitely better, but we can't promise people that means we're going to negotiate harder and get a better price, right? So
But the override piece factors in, and like the staffing situation when Dave Field was explaining like the staffing one to it.
for certain. But I mean,
Yes.
once you start getting into the indirect enterprise fee impact on it, like I just feel like that's
I
too many
understand,
degrees to
it's
move
getting
that.
into
That's
the-
like
But you could say something like, because of not passing the override, like we have to reconsider all the fees that we charge, right? I mean, that is accurate.
we have not. That sounds like contemplative and forward. We've already raised them and that's over, right? Like we're not reconsidering. We did that, and
I thought
they're
they
up.
were figuring them out now.
Well, the schools can say
Yeah.
that, but the town,
Yes.
we've raised all of our fees dramatically.
Yeah.
We don't have the number of fees like the town has. We only
Yeah.
have a few, and
But I think that's why we also want, we're never going to fix everyone's problems, but making an annual thing to review the fees. If we say we do it every January, sure, the public has a chance to learn that and know that you're pro or anti raising fees. We are talking about it in January and we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Rather than, hey, we haven't really raised them in 5 or 6 years. And now it looks like we're doing this as retaliation to the.
Right, and so
To the
I would tie
situation.
that back to what
not
Kelly,
retaliation,
what it's cause and effect.
survival.
Right.
I know, but that's how people perceive.
I understand, but I
Back
think
to my point.
That's to what Jen also said. But it was like, you know, we're at a point where we're talking about like core functions now. We're not talking about like we've lost ground since the override failed, and so I mean, unless we're talking. And it sounds like we're not. It sounds like we're explicitly not talking about a structural fix. So it would, to me, be super misleading to suggest that even if we have a menu override, like there's not, like the fees are not going down at
Right.
this point, right?
No.
Because now we're
Right.
No, I think people know that once something goes up, it doesn't come down.
Bunch of buckets that we have to look at to kind of help us muddle along. Nothing's
correct
fixing
to do the
it.
best that we can.
But the override is one part of it. Fees are another part. You know, it's not one or the other is going to fix the problem.
I do think we could even, not to make it like a third slide, but we could look at here's what we're trying to do to manage our way through, to Jackie's point. Like I think the stormwater utility fee is a solution to,
Correct. Yeah.
okay, you don't trust us to give us, the majority of you do not trust us to
Yeah, to
increase your
fund this through a
taxes.
general fund.
So now we are going to
Look at it through a fee-based
implementing
system.
fees, and that's how we will try to fix and keep managing the government. I mean, that is,
It's the truth.
because I also don't want us as elected officials, we shouldn't really be, not that we are, kind of wallowing in this like, we lost, it's sad, and now we're not, we have to continue to
forward.
show people that we're finding a way through. And if you have ideas, let us know, but
But
fees are a potential Band-Aid to
right,
what
but
we're
not
trying- what we're
everything's
doing.
going to find a way to get through. Some things are going to have to go away.
But that's part of finding a way through is that we all collectively need to accept that. That's part of
That's what they-
finding.
But I
a way
think
through.
the question isn't
That's what
really
I'm
whether
hearing
we
as well.
accept it.
Right.
It's whether the constituents are going to be accepting it. That's
so
why I think
this
we-
is hard to say, but like it's irrelevant. It's happening. The choice.
Well, that's what I mean. That's when I'm thinking about why I would be in favor of going back for an override is because it's giving them another
Choice.
chance
Right.
to say,
Right? Do I want this to continue in
Yeah.
this direction or not?
By the way, I do find that a persuasive argument.
Yes, especially if it's before the town meeting, right? Because then the budget at town meeting next May is whatever was just picked,
Yeah.
basically.
Part of what I was envisioning with the idea was to stick with your original statement of listening. And for that reason, my sense is, like, I'm not, obviously not married to this, but I do think it should be considered. If we're listening, then what we're putting up in front of folks is essentially something that, however we choose to visually do it or whatever, something that says, here is problem. And then turning it back to people in the hour before town meeting as efficiently as possible, because you're right, people could dominate the mic and so on and so forth, to say, what would you like us to do about it? It's a chance for them to say, well, whatever you do, no stormwater thing. We hate fees. We're going to get a lot of that, right? probably get repetitive questions and all kinds of stuff. But I think that if we come out with and here's all the things we're going to do, it's sort of a statement that, or at least I fear it may be a statement that we already have the solutions. We're getting your input, but we're going to ignore it anyway. Or it's a lot of time where we're defending why that's the right thing, which is not listening. It's arguing.
But what is the goal? If they're saying we don't want the stormwater thing, is that then going to be your?
They're gonna have a chance to vote. They're not voting on whether it happens.
But I mean, right, but if you, I guess my point is, what is the plan to do with that feedback? If we get that feedback, are you then not gonna move forward with that? What is
it's information. I mean, there isn't a plan with it. And I would be really careful to say,
But you have to say
we are
that.
here to listen. This isn't town meeting. You're not voting on how different departments and different parts of the budget manage things. But we're giving you this information in advance.
Yeah,
if you would like to
how do you feel
challenge
about
the
it, or-
information, if you would like to challenge decisions that are being made or have been made, if you have a creative idea for where that we should be focused. Frankly, not to be overly cynical, I expect we will hear many of the things we have heard before. But what this is an opportunity for the people who care to engage to have some of the back and forth, some of the Q&A, some of the opportunity to have their voices heard with decision makers in the room. And again, to me, again, I'm not married to this, but to me, it's a chance to create what you were describing, listening.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear to add what you're saying too. The Republic's opinion and perspective on this and input is valued and could inform outcomes from this.
Sure,
I would be very
Yeah,
careful
I
to
make
say
sure that
could.
they understand that there's exactly could.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, well, it's right. I mean, that's, so Dr. Broad, to your point, I mean, many of these things, if not in that room that night, the most impactful choices people ultimately are going to get to vote on, right? And so this is a check-in for us, and it sounds like we're talking and coalescing around like a one-way receiving activity, because I am sensitive to, I don't want to, I don't think it's constructive. To your point, I don't want to be in a position where somebody is sharing how they feel about something and it feels like I'm arguing with them. There are places where those debates will happen, right, on specific articles and budgets at town meetings, but if we're going to say, hey, here's where we're at as a community, here's where we're heading at some of the challenges, tell us how you feel about that, because we need to start making some tough calls in the next couple of months about what do we do next spring and summer.
But will you correct misinformation?
I
think it's fair that there, I mean, yes,
it depends on what we're trying to do.
I would say you should, but not in a lecturing, just
Yeah, not defensive, just that's inaccurate, please refer to this thing, which I had to do today on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
What
I guess
happened today?
I would ask the committee chairs.
Oh, you have to tell me later.
The school committee, you just have general open public comment, don't you? And it's a one-way street, isn't it?
One-way street.
Yeah, I mean.
And if they want specific information, they're encouraged to email us directly.
Yeah, because I hear you, and my inclination, as I'm sure is no surprise to anyone who's worked with me, is to get into the fray, right?
Well, not just to make sure that it's corrected in the moment so it doesn't spread.
Yep, that's all. Just a simple,
Yeah.
here's where you can find information about that. This is the actual fact. Move on. That's it. I know that can be very difficult.
Yeah, I don't know. So again, I'm being self-sure because you're all looking at me, and.
That's because you know everything.
Sorry,
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't. That clearly doesn't matter.
Cassandra.
Right? It doesn't.
And you do risk coming off as
Obnoxious at this point. I don't want to be sitting up there in a suit and tie saying, "Ooh, I told you so. Look how bad it's getting."
Well,
right?
nobody's asking you to do that. I think
Yeah.
it's like if someone comes up and says something that's totally untrue, like Easton has the highest taxes in the state. You have to make sure to say, well, that's actually not true.
I don't know. I promise. You probably leave and you're like, you were just trying to be contrarian, like you're in a philosophy class. Like, but where does that end?
Well, yeah, it is going to be,
And
there will
where-
be some gray spaces for
Right,
sure.
and where's the line?
Yeah.
You can actually make it as simple as some of what you just said is not entirely accurate, but please can we have the next person, we're very interested in everybody's opinion.
And honestly, some of those inaccurate points were really important as we move on with future discussions. Not to say that we should cater to them, I mean, we just know what they are.
I feel like it's tough because we're kind of trying to plan this as elected officials, and then we're kind of carting Connor and Dr. Cabral out to be like,
Well, no,
make sure you correct them.
I
Good luck.
think.
Well, I think the department heads would have to, right? The department.
Correct as much as we can too.
Yeah.
We are all have a level of.
Well,
I'll let him see it if you want.
I guess it then gets back to the intent, right? Which is it a pure listening session, good, bad, and ugly, or is it a debate?
But
I don't think so.
Debate, it's just basically recalibrating the conversation so we don't spin into a state of.
Well, and I can tell you from personal experience, when you're sitting there and somebody gets up and says things that are really, really offensive and just rips you to shreds, and you have to sit there and just be like, thank you for your comment.
So I
It's
think
very
we've all lived through
difficult.
degrees of it. I mean, we've all been in those roles, and it's awful. It's an awful feeling when people come in
It's
the
an
room
awful
looking you in the
feeling.
face, or writing notes to each other and saying things, whispering for you to hear it in the room. I mean, we know those things won't happen, and it is awful. So
Then maybe you just frame it as a Q&A then. I'm just sensitive about setting expectations. That's all. I don't want, people are stressed. This is all stressful. We are all stressed.
Probably best if do it as a Q&A, just in case.
To
frame it that way.
Q&A, 30 minutes,
But
10 minutes. To
but we
present.
want to hear your ideas, you know?
And send your ideas to budget at easton.ma.
Yeah, put up a slide of our emails. Or,
I think we can just have one email address that gathers it, and we can figure out what the logistics look like of getting that information. Because I worry about us each taking piecemeal things and then not.
Yeah, no, we
aggregating
can
them.
create an alias of like budget at easton.ma.us that can go to the chair and vice chair and then be aggregated for each meeting if there's enough of it coming in to say here's things we're seeing, here's a hearing. I mean, yeah, we could.
10 minutes before, 10 minutes to go through 2 to 3 slides, a few minutes of Q&A, and say at this point we have to stop it. Questions and comments can be sent to this address, and then come to the subcommittee's meetings if you want to provide public comment. Beat that up. I can tell you're ready to.
Well,
I thought we said an hour.
It's really smart what you're talking about. I have a gut feeling that people want interaction, and so I'm trying to find. I don't have really the right words for it.
They want it, yeah.
Interaction.
Yeah.
The Q&A approach is more interaction than the listening.
Oh, I thought you just said okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Sorry, I thought you said no Q&A.
No,
I've
I've actually been sold the Q&A idea, so I'm pitching it as.
Yeah, I don't know that the right thing is to frame it one way or another or try to force the issue. I think that if there's anything valuable, it's going to be in somebody posing a question, throwing out an opinion, and
the way town meeting goes, where some people get up and ask questions, some people get up and state perspective.
and having somebody, either an MC or Kate or somebody who's quick to say, thank you for your thoughts. Can we pass the mic to somebody else? We're trying to gather as much information and insight as we can before town meeting starts promptly at 7, So in other words, if somebody's turning it into let's beat up on Kelly, then we're there to say, okay, it's really not constructive. Move on. Let's get some more thoughts.
Can we say you have, try to keep it under 2 minutes?
Well, sometimes the best things come out of somebody talking for 5 minutes. Sometimes.
I disagree with that.
There's no perfect way. I mean, I'm a big believer in just setting expectations on the front end, right? So if we are sensitive to time constraints, I think setting those expectations is good because you've seen it. You've seen it at town meetings. And it's not an Easton thing, it happens everywhere. You see it in public meetings where somebody, they don't necessarily, there's not expectations shared on the front end. And they come in and with a 6 or 8 page printed thing, and there's no way they're going to get through it. And then the question gets called, and people get frustrated, and they jeer at each other. And I think we all really want to work hard. We want to try to preempt those things to an extent we can, right? And if we set a time, there'll be criticism, and there's time, they're like, that's okay. But at least we're being honest with people in front of like, hey, you know what? This is a brief meeting. This is not the intention to be the one and only time to share how you feel. We want to put this on your radar. Let's have some Q&A before town meeting. There's going to be some stuff on the warrant that is a direct reflection of where we are financially. And there's going to be more opportunities. Here's a dedicated email, and we'll have some listening sessions down the road. I think that's...
Spoken like a master. I love it.
We're going to need, that puts more need for you and Dr. Cabral to be there to respond to the
Correct.
facts.
And fire and
And
police.
the department
And our
heads
department
as
heads.
well, and any of the leadership that you.
Correct. I would need to check. And when the select board meeting, it can't happen. I mean,
Yeah, so I mean, expect we can't.
our town meeting day, like we have things booked, reverse engineered from 7 p.m. till like basically 10 in the morning. So but it's meetings.
So too late
It's
to
not
add
brainstorming.
an article to the warrant, like to give a report of the budget subcommittee like we have at town meeting?
I suppose so, but I mean, what's
Just make it part of town meeting instead of before town meeting? I feel like it's gonna be kind of hectic with people still filing in and,
You mean started at 7?
yeah, as part of town meeting instead of before the town meeting.
well, I don't know. I mean, you just clearly advertise. Like some people want to go to town meeting, vote, and move on with their life. Like and so you could. Maybe I think I'll check. But if you're clearly advertised, like, hey, if you want to come have a more just like open discussion, that's like we're not voting on things. It's at 6. If you want to just come for voting on what's on this warrant, come at 7.
Do you think an hour is too long?
No, because just realistically, of getting people in and out of a room, people sitting, and then if town meeting starts at 7, you have to cut this off at like 6:45 to clear the room, reset the tables, get people ready. I mean, I don't know.
So 45 minutes.
I see
45
what you're
minutes, 50
getting at.
minutes.
I kind of agree with Connor that it's, if you formalize it, the biggest material effect, you're going to make town meeting longer. And you're going to have people trying.
Which is a common complaint.
Right. And you're going to have people trying to call a question that's not a question. I can just see that like crazy happening then.
So there's some logistics aspects to this that I would imagine you need to go back and like sort out before we can actually say this is feasible even. But is there general agreement with the group that there's some kind of structure where we did something before town meeting? We're just thinking about time and everything else, and we're probably getting into the weeds of details that you guys really probably need to sit down and say, can we actually pull this off? So I guess the question is do people feel generally?
So we should just make this Connor's problem, is what you're saying.
Well, no, I actually.
Just kidding.
It's Connor's problem no matter what. Actually, probably Sean's problem. Sorry, Sean. To just run down the logistics of it, of what's feasible, talking to Kate, getting department heads and commitments from everybody there. But among this group, the question you have to answer is just, is this something, generally, if some version of this, what we want to do?
Yeah.
And people can commit to being there.
Mike, Jackie, I mean, setting aside
Either
the
as
schedule,
soon as I can be there,
but
yeah.
as a member, you're chair of school, but like, did you like this idea of a way to try to get some?
I'm willing to try anything at this point.
Okay.
Okay. So I know, Dr. Cabral, you're in the same boat. Probably there's some logistics to sort out. So can we just agree that we support it, and you can tell if it's even feasible or not?
I mean, if it's a priority for the subcommittee, we'll find a way to make something like this happen. Right, Sean, you're giving me a very forlorn look. Do you know something?
No, I'm only thinking that some people will show up to this, but the folks, like, we'll have more of a captive audience once everyone's seated for town meeting. So I'm wondering if you were also thinking if there are next steps and calls to action that we should there be an announcement once town meeting is called to order, so you have that captive audience to take advantage of that opportunity to reach more people, because there might be the people that show up early and then mill about beforehand. But if you have some events, some listening sessions or a survey or something to engage with in the future, then we'll say, hey, like while you're here, do this. You didn't come in, but we had a listening session directly.
You could also do that when you've wrapped town meeting up for the night and have the final slide be whatever we had a budget subcommittee and say, hey, some of you weren't here at the beginning, budget subcommittee met, we're gonna have more opportunities. Read up on this stuff, go to the budget page, send your feedback to us.
At the end of the listening session?
No, at the end of the town meeting, because I mean, it's 19 articles or so, and I don't think we're gonna be there till midnight. So, either way, I mean,
Something that we can take advantage of the fact that we have a captive audience. So whether it's a slide or something, what that looks like, TBD, but might as well take advantage of that.
Spoken like a true communications guru.
That's what I'm thinking. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to tie it all together. So
everyone's generally supportive of this approach. Details to be sorted out, and we'll let you know what they are. Is that the idea?
I place my trust in you.
Are you guys comfortable with this?
Jim,
I'll do whatever you determine, yeah.
I hate large scale public speaking, but
Oh, yeah,
this
me
is
too.
important, so. It's so fascinating when every fire chief says, don't do this thing, and then you're like, yes, I'll do it.
I'm with you, Jen. I am with
Like
you.
right now. All right, does everyone feel satisfied that we've had a discussion on the November town meeting piece? And I think we can sort out the listening session, what after looks like. I guess actually the other question is, are folks generally in agreement that we should have some listening sessions after? If we don't have to settle dates right now, we can do that through email, but.
Sure.
I don't know if we could also build it into like just a couple of our meetings. And we'll have some kind of meeting in. Actually, think about that schedule-wise.
I think that if we're going to try to use the opportunity of town meeting to say, here's what's happened over summer and here's the headwinds we face, let's have some Q&A and let's engage, that we need to have those listening session dates picked. So we don't need a meeting to do that. We could send out doodle polls and get, one or two, maybe one after town meeting before Thanksgiving and one after Thanksgiving before winter break.
Yeah.
Right? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I'll support that.
Yeah, and I agree. We don't know what will come of it.
Yeah, Kelly, I agree, but I think that
It's the right thing to do.
I think it's an important thing to offer.
I think doing it 0 would be wrong.
So we'll figure out the dates for those and be there for that. And it's fireside chat on. I don't know if I like listening as much, but we can figure out how to frame it as. I agree with you. I don't know if I want to be bombarded with like you're awful and you did this for an hour, but.
Yeah, I mean, we'll frame it, I think, as an informational update from the budget subcommittee and Q&A with community leaders before town meeting starts about where we're heading.
Perfect. So we'll land on dates through email because trying to do that right now would be chaotic. Does anybody else have any more questions, comments, or anything around? I think we've kind of spilled into things, but the override discussion or town meeting. Okay. And I think that also ties into the calendar. So again, we'll sort out the exact dates via email. New information regarding revenue or expenditure forecasting. Anything, we're looking at December, right? You shared the GIC update.
Yeah, I alluded to it. The finance committee has a finance plan. I don't think I printed copies for it here. I apologize. We'll send it out. It's probably on the website, or it will be on the website soon. That shows in detail what I've referenced, which is where the budget amendment in the fall will cut further into general government, and the agency has to move some to fire. But new growth came in slightly better than projection, I think, by 50,000.
Well, it hasn't been certified yet.
Yeah, it hasn't been certified, so some things came in modestly less bad, which is good. And but as far as expense information, what we're hearing is I dig in today on healthcare. It's not good. So.
What is up with the earmarks being withheld in towns? I saw the headline of a Boston Globe article, but I don't have access.
What was that today? I know that there is increasing fear, shockingly, and discussion happening at municipal conferences about, and I believe there was legislation filed. I don't know if it made it of the governor seeking broader 9C cut authority, which I know people in the MMA and Superintendent Association were scared of, because what 9C is the authority that the governor of Massachusetts has to unilaterally cut the budget after it's been adopted by the legislature in times of economic duress. I certainly cannot speak for the governor, but generally, I don't think you start talking about expanding your authority for that because you think good things are coming. So I read the earmark article. I'll take a look. So perhaps it's related to that. But
Yeah, they're saying, just from the brief part I could read, that she may be withholding the earmarks to the towns. So,
125 million for local projects held indefinitely.
oh wow,
I don't know how that's going to impact us.
great.
Indefinitely delayed releasing 10 million, tens of millions of earmarks for lawmakers with local projects in the face of mounting fiscal uncertainty.
Sorry, I thought you knew. I feel bad I broke the news to
That's
you.
okay. I'm getting very used to it. I'm gonna go cry now.
I feel like I just broke Connor.
No, that's not doable. That's okay. But that's not good.
No.
That's not good. That's not indicative of an optimistic outlook. And there's already preliminary polling that like cutting the income tax is like 80% of people are like, this is awesome.
Well, I think there's fears of like what's happening at the federal level.
Oh yes. Yeah. If there's, I mean, we're still, unless I missed this news, the government is still shut down. We mentioned that federal government is currently shut down. The specter of cuts to Medicare and Medicaid would be like biblical level bad in Massachusetts in particular because of Mass Health and what a large portion of the state budget Mass Health takes up and how much of that is funded through federal healthcare funding. I mean, it is open and eyes open conversation with state lawmakers in Boston of, talking about cuts with a B, like billions, if things like this happen. So, that leads to, I assume that's related to making calls like withholding indefinitely funds like that. That's scary.
Do we have big earmarks?
So it depends on if they're fiscal 26 or if they're unreleased fiscal 25. So we'll have to read into it specifically.
So it's probably something we want to follow up on next time, right?
Yeah, we'll take a look at it. So there are some that we have received, like for Swifts Park. I'm uncertain if those funds are already received, Wendy, or not. From the late Representative Doherty, given the timing of that, I would hope that made it through the fiscal 25 and not 26 process.
We did that already.
So we'll check. But setting aside the earmarks, I mean, that's indicative of that's not good.
Big problem.
And there's a collective outlook that is suboptimal for us to navigate this. So. Well, thank you for letting me know.
You're welcome.
No, it's good. It's important to know.
So I hate to ask, but anybody else have any big news about revenue or expenditure forecasting updates?
Not Kelly.
I did share an article with Connor earlier this week, but Hanover did pass a $3.5 million override for fiscal 26, and they're already looking at fiscal 27 deficits of almost $1 million,
Oh.
and growing each
I
year.
think Kelly should go hang out somewhere and
Well, no, I just
take your bad news.
have to figure out what we have control over and then just deal with it. So
Thank you for sharing that. That's
just don't think even we should all be in the back of our minds that even an override would potentially solve this problem. So
Not a menu one.
yeah.
any other questions, comments, or any points around the agenda items that are in this ongoing discussion that have kind of got meshed in a little bit as we move on to the new business, which I think we can do relatively quickly. Maybe.
So are you all good at this point with like town meeting that I'll just check in with Jen and Jackie as chair and vice chair, and Dr. Brawl and I will obviously coordinate as we always do for prepping for town meeting. Does that work for everyone? And once we firm up a plan, we'll send it out, and obviously you can't deliberate on it, but If we don't hear objections, then we won't call a special meeting of budget subcommittee to debate it, and we'll just go forward. Does that work?
That works.
Yeah, and we'll, so just plan to block that hour in your calendars and for now.
Yeah, plan for 6. And again, I'll speak with other folks.
I'm so disappointed.
So maybe
What was the date again?
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments about,
Connor, sorry. No, I'm looking at 2 different calendars. It's November what? Sorry, 10th.
any other questions, comments around town meeting or anything else you may have missed as part of the discussion you were just having? Okay, item number 6, new Massachusetts Municipal Association report. Connor, is this an item that you're planning to speak to?
I sent it to everyone electronically last week. It's late. If anyone has questions, or happy to talk about it a bit. I can't take credit for it. The MMA did it, but I'm on the fiscal policy committee. It's something we've been working on and giving feedback to. I think it's helpful. The more that we can raise awareness that these are universal challenges, I think the better. But I'm sensitive to the time. So.
And the press release.
The DOR, yeah, the override.
Oh,
right?
But I did read it. It's really interesting. It's a change in education.
Yes.
This thing is huge.
Yeah. Yeah,
Does
and
anyone
general
wanna speak
government.
to anything in there? Or we can always come back to it. I'm looking for like a town meeting.
System's broken. It's not sustainable.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we are still in nominal dollars in most communities receiving fewer general government funds from the state than we were in 2007, not adjusted for inflation, which is not sustainable. When you adjust for inflation, it's even more bleak. Chapter 70 is largely the case for most non-SOA and gateway city communities.
Which is ours.
Which is Easton. And now, most places, which is why, the house is on fire.
We've been warning them for years.
Correct.
I don't mean to make it a long discussion, but just I'm curious, this goes to fundamental how we fund services at the Commonwealth and municipal level. Is just from your ears to the ground perspectives, are we likely to see continued all things broken for the foreseeable future, or is there a chance of a groundswell to say maybe we need to reconsider how we do, I don't know what it is, taxation?
We
Prop
as in the
2.5?
Commonwealth?
Yes, the Commonwealth. We don't have the authority, almost something, I don't know. We don't have the authority here at municipal level to do it. But I mean, is there a push to say the funding mechanisms, the laws that govern all of that cannot be tweaked? In other words, it's not a tweaking problem. It's not like you take a whole bunch of communities and say, well, you're not low-need communities anymore. It's not like you can just say, well, there's a ton of extra money, let's just allocate more money. It's something where either you've got to mess around with the revenue at the Commonwealth level or mess around with the revenue at the municipal level, the latter of which is only realistic if somebody tweaked fundamentally Proposition 2.5. So I'm just wondering, it's not meant to be a long discussion, just is there anything that you guys hear from your peers, other supers, other administrators, other accountants, et cetera, that says, man, this is coming to a head and somebody's going to do something, or are we just basically looking at, it's going to suck for a whole long time?
Well, if you read the MMA report, it's basically letting you know how much it's going to suck. And that's the MMA. So.
Yeah, I mean, there is a growing recognition that this is not sustainable and that we are reaching a breaking point, I think. That's how my
Yes,
colleagues
but I don't hear the fundamental or
Correct.
conceptual
Yeah.
ideas at
Is
the
the
state level of
actual
how
things-
to fix that. or
Right, is the thing is
ameliorate
we're
it.
going to go and break, or is the thing we're going to do something about it?
Well,
It's probably going to break first, because
Yeah,
I think
I
the
mean-
state is basically us at a different level, getting the same
Yeah, I mean, the first
feedback, telling the same stories, explaining the same situations, getting the same pushback. I just think it's a different level. Same thing, different level.
I was afraid you were going to answer, but
I mean, if you think about the options, you raise your state taxes, which probably no one wants to do. You can raise your municipal taxes, which.
yeah, did you hear we're dropping them 20%?
So you deregulate and do like go the opposite way, lower, in theory, lower the burdens of regulations and try to just
And reduce
lower the standards
and reduce public services.
consolidate probably at the county level. I mean,
Right.
But that would take money from the state, so it's.
We have seen questions that go through our listserv for school committees about a couple of different things, about changing Prop 2.5 to something else.
Right.
To how do you regionalize school districts?
Yep.
I mean, we are seeing
Yeah.
emails like
So-
that.
But not from the government, not from.
Yeah, that's coming from
school
us.
committee members.
That's, yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
Right.
so yeah, on the municipal level, there is a growing appreciation for, I mean, there's always been one, but I mean, now there's a appreciation of the severity of what we are all heading into, and it's not just us. There was a healthcare summit, and it was leaders from various Blue Cross, GIC, Maya, and like every third word was crisis. Like we're just like the vibes are not good.
Can I say that little chuckle? I
but-
would characterize as maniacal.
So, but the silver lining here is you can't start to come up with solutions until we all agree that there's a problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it is positive, and maybe this is what's left of my youth showing through. It is positive that there is growing
Alarm.
and alignment amongst associations as well, right? And leading into, it wasn't about Easton, but you're starting to see VMTA, Supers Association, labor and management, people saying like, this is like, we could all like punch each other over and over about, management approach and COLA bargaining. We're like, what are we doing? Like, right? Like, can we be real about this? We are structurally not set up to keep going. So I think it's positive that there is this amount of discussion happening, because it has for a long time. There's been folks where Easton was not as representative of the broader suburban experience in Massachusetts.
We were an outlier,
Right,
and we
now
were
now
not getting
everyone's
a
been
lot of
innovative.
attention
Now everyone's
for
down in
that.
the dark with us, and it is good that it is raising awareness. So lawmakers.
But to our earlier point, so sorry,
Go ahead.
before that idea gets lost, to that earlier point, we were talking about minimum aid, wage adjustment factor, labor markets, when nobody else was, because it didn't affect them. Now that it's affecting them,
Yeah, it's a microcosm of right.
it's a microcosm of what we're talking about.
And-
The state is having those listening sessions on Chapter 700.
Right. But similar again to where we are, once it gets to a point where the effect is obvious to a large plurality, it's too late to fix it through incrementalism, right? The price tag to fix it is exponentially higher than had incremental steps been taken preventatively, right? It's the same thing as, I'm not, what that mechanic just told me my car needs, that's outrageous, I'm not paying it, then your transmission goes a year later and you're paying substantially more.
Right.
Right, and that's, so there's growing appreciation for it, and I think that is a positive thing. Are there solutions on the table? At a systemic level, no, not right now. But there is an increasing conversation happening among folks of regionalizing where they can. Obviously, people are talking about privatizing. And it's, at the end of the day, we're a balanced budget state. Massachusetts has a balanced budget, we have a balanced budget. We're going through a period of inflation that has not happened in the history of Prop 2.5. Right, Prop 2.5, I think for most of us, it's been all most people have known their either entire life or working in tax-paying life. These sets of dynamics haven't existed at the same time. And so we're going to be heading into a period where, I don't know who said it, but either the state's going to be paying more to backstop the way of life we as a Commonwealth, much of which is provided at the local level by schools and cities and towns, will need to provide substantially more at a time when they're so pessimistic of their outlook. We're not releasing earmarks, right? That's not great. Communities will need to make the choice. It's going to become our culture, regardless of the cost on certain families, that we just have overrides every few years to backstop it, or we need to get, I don't want to say accept, or we need to get more comfortable with services just fundamentally getting scaled back. We have some of the best public services in America.
Yes.
Right? Part of why the cost of housing here is so high is because people want to be here, because we have excellent schools, we have good public services, but it's really expensive to deliver, and we do so in a really economically inefficient way in this state at the town level.
Yeah.
And there's upsides to that. You can go to a town meeting and talk to all the leadership of your community and have a real conversation instead of like a county government of 900,000 people. Like, I don't know if you can really do that. You probably can't. But I think we're just reaching a tough time where, no, there's no clear path out of it right now. And it's hard.
We would have buried the lead if we didn't talk about that in the beginning of the meeting. We wouldn't hide that from you.
At this point in my career, about not just like, oh, so that's the state's fault, or like, they should have better leadership. They are trying to contend with what happens if we lose billions of dollars in healthcare funding.
Right. I totally understand.
So it's
and all I was getting at was I mean, the analysis is, I think everybody here gets the analysis and is a profound agreement. Where I was coming from was just if there was a sense of groundswell, if there was and that's I'm not repeating the question. You've answered it. I just want you to know that's where that was all I was really looking at.
Any other questions or thoughts or?
I'll stop talking.
No, I mean, if you wanted to talk.
No. just being jovial.
Anyone else? Discussion and vote on the minutes for September 8th, 2025.
So moved.
motion to approve.
Second.
Hey, that was, you got it.
Unanimous. Right.
All in favor? Okay, it's amended. Okay, so it's unanimous. Scheduling of next meeting of budget subcommittee. I don't think we have the ability to put in another meeting before town meeting, so.
Thank you.
2 meetings worth of meetings tonight. So let's just plan on doing things asynchronously through email and
For scheduling.
for scheduling only. And please don't respond on things that and we will plan on using the hour before town meeting as the time of our next meeting budget. Listening session, timing wise only. All right. So can I get a
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? None?